everyone, and welcome to the Avocado Games Cast, the Avocado's gaming podcast. If you're listening to this episode, that means you somehow weren't scared away by the previous one, so thank you. And more importantly, what the hell is wrong with you? Anyway, this episode is all about the urban open world game, the kind that was popularized by Grand Theft Auto 3 and that has since become a genre unto itself, with entries like Saints Row, Sleeping Dogs, and arguably even the Crackdown series. My name's Merve, and this week my guests are playing bullshit missions. He somehow has to kill 30 enemies with a golden butcher's knife. It's BT.
Well, it's an effective weapon. How else can you feel about that?
I don't know. She's been trying to destroy all the free laser stands with her Globex supervillain car for 5 days straight. It's lovely bones.
Hello, it's true. I've gone through the worst of college, and now I'm all Simpsons games all the time. I'm totally rebranding.
So that's when you do it. And finally, he knows that Big Smoke is lying when he says that train is easy to catch. It's the Kappa.
Oh shit, here we go again.
Just had to catch the damn train, CJ.
Yeah, but, I mean, can we spoil San Andreas right now?
I think so.
Okay, yeah. The thing about San Andreas is that why that mission is so hard makes sense once you get to the end of the game, when it's revealed what Big Smoke was actually doing all along. But I don't think it was intentionally made that hard. I think that was just a fuck up on part of the design, is that just by chance happened to make sense at the end of the game. I don't know. Yeah, San Andreas. That was a game.
I can barely remember most of San Andreas, to be honest with you. Like, it's such a blur.
Yeah,
I never tried it. I guess I could play it on my smartphone if I wanted to.
Yeah, that's right. They have GTA on phones now. It's like the real deal. Yep. I played San Andreas back in undergrad, and my laptop was not powerful enough to run it properly, so I got to the last mission and couldn't complete it because the frame rate slowed down to like 5 FPS.
That's one thing that, I guess we could start talking about it now, but it's always been weird to me how unoptimized GTA games have been and how well people have received them. Like, they've got levels of me, at least, of, like, the infamous Bethesda, these games barely work type stuff going on a lot of times. And people very rarely talk about that with GTA, so...
Yeah, we'll get into that in a little bit. I'm surprised at how, like, GTA games never really controlled well, but they've somehow managed to kind of corner the market on the genre. They weren't even the first to the punch, as we'll get into later when we talk about the history of the genre. But before we get to that, what have you folks been playing lately?
I'll start.
Yeah, sure.
I have been playing an absolute ton of Destiny 2. Nothing changed there, but I wanted to talk a little bit about what they've got going on right now, because I think it's really cool. So live service games, they tend to have kind of like if you think traditional MMOs, they have things that are like seasonal events, right? So Halloween, Christmas, stuff like that. So right now they've got something going on that they call the Solstice of Heroes, which is basically kind of like the end of a season type thing, where they basically let you go buck wild and have a really good time with like just all the stuff that you've done throughout the season and kind of like break the game. And right now they've got a very cool mode called the EAZ, which is very vertically based. And you would think in a game like Destiny that vertical, has been a thing for a while, but it actually hasn't been. So been really enjoying that. Been playing with a lot of friends who have kind of taken a break on the game and are coming back for the new seasons and stuff as the new expansion's right around the corner.
Yeah. Destiny has underrated movement mechanics. Like
it really does. Yeah.
You can double jump, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And you can fly, you can almost float. And then I think a lot of people forget that, in the Anthem days, how
the Anthem kind of got of January 2019 to March 2019.
Yeah, exactly. That Anthem kind of got this credit for being this really movement-based game, and then I think it's always been in Destiny's DNA as well. But yeah, I've been enjoying the Solstice. It's been a really fun diversion. Reminds me of like kind of some of the stuff I enjoyed, and they've got some really great armor sets. They kind of I posted one of them. I think Merve, you saw it. I'm a sucker for Space Samurai, like the look of a Space Samurai. I just think it's such a cool look. And they've really been kind of doubling down on that, and it's such a cool look. I can't get away from it. So I've been spending way too much time trying to get that that set on my character.
I really like sci-fi or space fantasy versions of like old aesthetics.
Yeah,
so if someone wants to do like I don't know, Victorian in the year 3000, I'd be all over that.
Yeah, Space Samurai or like Space Western or you know what I mean. Just there's just something about that look that I think is really cool. So yeah, it's there hasn't been really much else. It seems like kind of a little bit of a dry spot for me. I've tried a couple other things. I downloaded a Warhammer game, Mechanicus. I really had some fun with that for a while, but it kind of, I don't know, it's like any other XCOM game. It's got a really artificial timer that's kind of driving me crazy. I'll probably put some more time into it overall, but right now I'm just kind of frustrated with, I don't know how you guys think about artificial timers. Like a game that's like, you can only play this game for 90 game days or, you know, whatever it is. And then you're stuck with whatever happens in that ending. It just feels fake to me.
Oh, personally, I really like just like strict structuralism in a game experience. So
this is structured. You love
I'm pretty pro with that. That like they're, you know, generally, you know, it's important that there are some ways to manage that. Like with Majora's Mask, you can rewind time as much as you want, that kind of thing. But yeah, I like that as a general idea, personally.
What I ended up doing is going into like the game's INI files and figuring out that I can edit it. So I'll be doing that.
Also, I did have one question about Destiny. Actually,
sure.
I saw that the new expansion got delayed, like slightly, like a couple weeks, right?
And community is ecstatic over it.
Yeah, I was curious about the response.
It's actually been really good because they're an independent studio now. Bungie is an actual, honest to goodness, independent studio, which has good and bad, right? Sure. I think what most people are recognizing is one, no crunch. People haven't liked hearing about crunches for a while now. It's not something that people enjoy reading about or, you know, feeling that their studios are doing. So it gets it out of the Borderlands 3 release window, which I think is important. I mean, I don't think the overlap is as big as some people say it is, but I think that's important. But the other thing it's doing is it's only 2 weeks, and they're trying to figure out this cross save thing. I don't think they've got a good handle on it yet, to be honest with you. Since what they implemented in like a couple days was like kind of the groundwork for it, and you could see that the game has gotten like noticeably laggier. There's been like pop in, pop out of people and textures. So I think that there's still a little bit left to go. But what they're doing is basically re-releasing all of Year One, they call it Destiny Year One, for free. Anybody can play all of Year One for free. And then if they want to continue, they can just jump on in and, you know, basically pay for the expansions and then continue playing from there. So they're having to come up with basically a whole new experience to get its hooks into you in the first, you know, couple hours or whatever for free players. So that's going to be something I think requires a little bit more planning than maybe they anticipated. But the Destiny community at large has kind of always been annoyed with how they've rolled out expansions. Activision driving the ship has been a big reason. So I feel like with them off their backs right now, they're able to really sit back and you know, do things the way they want to, release them as they want to, and not feel the crunch and not feel like a day is the most important thing when they've already got it all worked out. So I think the community is actually like, usually I think there's a timeline for most people when they hear like their favorite game is going to be delayed, where they're like, okay, as long as it's good, and then you start to see delay after delay, and that's when you should get worried, I think, in my opinion. You know, 3 or 4 delays, I'll probably be worried. But if it's a 2-week delay and it's because of, from what I've heard, it's, you know, rumor wise, it's PS4 save systems are a nightmare, and I believe that because everybody who's ever worked on a game apparently has said that. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out, and hopefully, you know, the free to play thing gets enough new people interested that they get to run with it from here.
Yeah, it seems like they've been able to kind of, I don't want to say re-engage with the community better since they've gotten away from Activision. but it seems like they're making decisions that are more in line with maintaining the product for a while rather than just pumping out new content.
One example is they've gotten away from loot boxes, and they've got to, if you like this cosmetic, you just straight up buy this cosmetic. Now, I mean, I think there's still a discussion to be had about whether cosmetics should be for real money in the first place. But I think most people, even who would agree with that, like I'm okay with it for the most part, would say, yeah, but I don't like buying a loot box and hoping that I get the cosmetic I want. I would much rather just pay, $2 for the skin that I like, rather than $2 for the hope that I get the skin I like.
I have no problem calling loot boxes gambling. I don't like them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a fan. I know some people have very, very passionate stances against microtransactions. I'm not one of those people, but I am one of those people who draws the line at loot boxes. I think they're bullshit. And to the point about game delays, I think by and large the gaming community, I mean, give or take a few angry Redditors, is okay with game delays. Something gets delayed by 6 months or 8 months or whatever. It's when things get, like you said, delayed repeatedly that people start to get a little impatient. It really depends from game to game, right?
Right.
Kentucky Route Zero has been delayed, 4 years now at this point. The last act.
That I would be worried about.
And everybody seems to be okay with it, which is bizarre to me, because I'm one of the few people who's not okay with it. But then you have other games like, I don't know, what's an example of a game that got delayed just a little bit?
Animal Crossing. Animal Crossing probably won't get delayed again. I guess we can't know that for sure. But that was a very well-received delay.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think a lot of Nintendo games have that go on, honestly. Like,
Fire Emblem got 2 delays.
Like those little weird release, more like a release window delay, because the release isn't fitting with something else. And I always feel like release window delays, I think, are a smarter way to do it. And, you see it with movies, too, all the time. I think people don't track movie releases as much as game releases, but you see it all the time there, too, where it's just like, what were we thinking having this go up against Avengers, and some movies anyway.
I remember Fox, their last few movies that they finished before Disney bought them, they kept moving them around, like Alita and Dark Phoenix. Those each got delayed like 2 or 3 times, and it was very funny.
And then there's that one X-Men movie that's basically never going to be released. So
the one with Tom Holland.
Yeah.
There's an X-Men movie with Tom Holland.
It's not. It's called Chaos Walking. It's like a YA thing, but it's also, when I saw a trailer for it, I thought it was a Purge sequel. If that tells you anything.
That's what you want to be identified closely with, is a Purge.
Yeah. Pretty sure most YA films are Purge sequels. No, I'm kidding. I sometimes it always boggles my mind when something that's near completion just gets canned entirely.
Yeah.
Like, it happened with the most high profile video game one I can think of is do you guys remember 6 Days in Fallujah?
Yeah.
Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
That one made sense though. I don't think anybody was hankering for that one. That was kind of a
that was
that would have been, it would have probably caused controversy at release.
I kind of have an issue with a game like that has like recoverable health in a real-time wartime situation.
Yeah, everything about that game sounded a really, really awful idea. It's hard to base, I think, a lot of that stuff like in active real-world, real-name places. I think even if you just name it something slightly different, doesn't feel as icky. You know what I mean? Like, even with Call of Duties that have kind of, I think, focused on real-world stuff, have always kind of felt a little gross.
And we'll get into that when we start talking about GTA.
Oh, yeah.
So, PT, what have you been playing?
Quite a bit. I'm still playing FF14. Still playing it there. I am actually just one final boss away from getting rid of the Heaven's Word content, which is the first expansion.
All right.
And then we have Stormblood, and then we have Shadowbringers, and then from reading other folks elsewhere, apparently they're hoping to get to 7.0, which would be 2 more expansions. So
Shadowbringers is the one that just came out, right?
Shadowbringers is the one that just came out, yes. So, but yes, so yeah, I've been playing a lot of that, and I'm kind of, just absorbed in it there, and a lot of what I had said earlier pretty much is the same, though I did want to correct myself when I think I said the first time that, more and more tanks are around it. No, I was wrong. No, there's still an issue, not quite as bad as what Kappa was saying, at the beginning, but those are usually the ones that take a long time to get into a dungeon rotation with. And one of the things that
you're saying there's a lack of tanks now, or not a lack of tanks? Or?
There always has been, probably because I don't think FF14 has the same type of drama as a lot of MMOs. I mean, I've heard otherwise. But if you play in the casual end, people are generally nicer. Yeah, just don't go into like the raids and serious people with their serious. You're not scoring enough DPS on your attack. La la la. It's like great, cool.
I can't take video games too seriously. I'm too much of a joker to do that.
But I know that Shadowbringers. Well, first off, patch 5.0, which was Shadowbringers, the beginning of that, essentially changed tanks to the point where their main ability that kind of shields them down no longer lowers their attack power, attack strength. So at this point, they are no longer just a bunch of damage sponges that can't really do anything. And then you have one of the classes that came with the new expansion, which is the Gunbreaker, which is essentially the basically Squall from Final Fantasy VIII with the Gunblade. And it's actually a more offensive version of a tank where, yes, you are blocking and you are, gathering people around, but you can also go back on offense quite a bit more. So I think that is something that they're really trying to do, is like, hey, it's not as horrible as it seems. Even though when I tried to do Paladin, I was like, I'm tired of being yelled at.
So it's almost like they kind of unbalanced the game to rebalance it.
They changed a lot of things. I don't know enough of the game to go, but basically, I know that I think it was Dark Knight and Dragoon both got some pretty massive changes. In fact, when you woke up the next day after the 5.0 patch came in, even if you didn't own Shadowbringers, you would see that, 6 or 7 of my abilities that were here before no longer exist.
It's strange when they do stuff like that. Like they're essentially unbalancing the mechanics to rebalance the meta.
Yeah. It's one of the weird things about Final Fantasy, and you could probably back me up on this if you played it a bunch, is I've always felt like the tanks look like appearance-wise a lot worse than the other classes. They just don't look as cool, And I feel like in Final Fantasy, a lot of what people want to play is characters that almost look like Final Fantasy characters. You know what I mean?
Right.
And the tanks always look kind of like blocky, and I don't even know how else to describe it. They don't look like Squall or Cloud or any of the other cool Final Fantasy characters. They just kind of all have their own thing. And if you think about Final Fantasy as a game, there's not really a lot of tank classes, in general. So
you should be able to tank while looking like, I don't know, Aerith or Vanille.
Yeah. Just covered in belts and
you technically can. You technically can if you go use the glamour feature.
Ah, there you go. So yeah.
Which I frankly just don't understand it. Every FAQ I've ever read about is just you got to do 6 different things and use this item, and then this item is no longer exists, and then you put it on this other. I'm like, I don't understand. All I want to do is make sure I look like Cloud because I got that level 1 equipment. I don't want to actually wear in a dungeon because I would die.
Cloud is such an edgelord, though. I don't look like Cloud.
I mean, like his Abbott Children look, I believe, like that type of uniform.
Cloud, Cloud is. I would sincerely argue, Cloud is by Final Fantasy design standards like pretty straightforward. Is part of the appeal. Like he's fairly simplistic. Because he was one of the first designs Nomura ever did for the series. Like it's not Kingdom Hearts 2 or 3 level when there's fucking actually 8 belts just splattered all over him.
Donald has fucking 3 zippers on his hat.
Yeah, exactly.
I was always partial to Sora's big-ass shoes in the first Kingdom Hearts.
Yes, which were designed that way specifically to make him look more like Mickey, you know?
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I was fucking moon boots. Do you have like fucking moon boots in Final Fantasy 14?
I'm sure, yeah. No, I've had some funny some folks who, God, there was somebody when we were doing a dungeon once that I swear looked like some weird ass Fortnite character with a giant head and running around, and I had a good laugh about that. And people were saying, "Great costume, man."
I like when you can be a little silly in MMOs, just because
me too.
I can't take them like super duper seriously. I don't know. I think it's like a celebration of gaming where everybody gets together and does fun shit.
Oh, right, because there are some pretty immersion-breaking stuff you can buy. I mean, to go back to what we were saying about, extra things, you can buy from a store, extra looks.
Yeah.
Words are hard. I'm sorry. You can go to the website, to their website and just buy. And it's not cheap. It's like $12-15 for clothes in a video game.
Yeah.
But you can get like you can get Eris's costume or this, or I know that they did a Final Fantasy 15 promotion a few months before I jumped in, and so there's people driving the regalia around, which that's really immersion breaking.
Yeah. I don't think that I played mostly like right as Realm Reborn hit, and it was weird because the races in the game, I don't want to sound racist, but you know what I'm talking about, like the actual game races. The races in the game felt really like ill-defined, like in a way. Like I think you had your classics, but what was like that big like half bear looking race?
Oh boy,
they were like big and blocky.
Mm-hmm.
Like they were kind of like they didn't really have anything going on in the story, and that like I think that game probably could have done well if they'd just basically had like very classic or stayed with classic, Final Fantasy type races as well. I mean, there's plenty of them out there.
I only really know humans and Moogles.
I was gonna say you did get to kill a Moogle King during the Realm Reborn's patch.
Finally,
kill a Moogle? Why?
No, it's
cute. Hashtag no mercy.
It's this hilarious bit where there's like 9 like small ones you have to fight, and then they summon the big King Mog, and then they all fight you, and it kind of sucks actually. It's tough.
So,
but
like devastated right
now.
But Heaven's Ward did a lot with dragons and dwarves and all sorts of weird things. So I think the expansions are heavily expanding on that type of stuff there. But been playing that, still enjoyable again there. And I will say for folks who are getting in there, yes, the Realm Reborn content, the 2.0 stuff, yeah, some of that is dire. The post-game stuff where they patched it in before Heaven's Word came out, that stuff is terrible. It's boring. There's actually quite a few people on the Avocado that are currently playing 14 right now. So they kind of said, "Oh yeah, that like 5 hours of nothing. Yes, it finally eventually did something."
Yes, yeah, I remember that very distinctly. I didn't get bored with the game, honestly. I enjoyed it all the way up until I started getting into what were the trials? Like you had to do certain like trials to unlock certain areas. Like you had to kill like Titan, and it was like a big boss encounter that you needed to get like a big group put together for. I don't remember what they were called, but they had like a specific name in game.
I believe Titan was kind of a forced story encounter that required 8 people.
Yeah, and then like that was kind of like I think it unlocked the Spiral dungeon. Maybe it was called.
Yeah, progression seems progression seems a little kinder these days because there's a ton of optional summon fights that you can do, but it's like, hey, you can fight Raymoof again in the extreme difficulty, and I'm like, no.
Yeah, exactly. I'm good.
Did it once, don't need to do it again.
So
anything else you want to mention about FF14?
I mean, not particularly, but yeah, I still like it there. I also wanted to say real quick, I was actually going to talk about, say, for games that were delayed for a long time that eventually came out, I was actually going to say Bloodstained is a good example, though it still didn't come out particularly completely cooked. It was still kind of half-baked.
Oh. Yeah, I've heard the Switch version was particularly
Switch
buggy.
It's terrible. It's less buggy and just it doesn't run well at all.
It's poorly optimized, yeah.
Yeah, that's hard to fix.
And then they've
done a couple patches, but it doesn't seem like it's in an especially good state still.
At this point, they were going to release this balance patch, which drove people insane because why would you balance a single-player game?
Yeah, exactly.
And not fix the huge problem that, because I think it's single-digit frames in certain areas for the Switch version. It should not have been released. The PS4 version is fine, though it's still kind of clunky. I liked that game overall, but I think some patches will help it to be a little better.
It's one of those ones that just like came out and just totally fell off my radar for some reason, but I hadn't heard enough good stuff to counter that, really.
Yeah, I've heard it's very good. It's just not optimized and kind of buggy.
Yeah.
Which is the kind of game where I can be like, okay, I'll wait 6 months until all the issues are ironed out, and then I'll have fun with it.
I would recommend that, yeah. I mean,
the impression you get from the big launch trailer that Iga did where he reenacts the bit from Symphony of the Night with the throwing the glass on the ground and everything, the impression you get is, he saw the people criticizing like the art design and the graphics, and he was like, this is what I'm going to prioritize in making sure that this is ready before release, not the actual programming.
Wow.
Which is really incredible.
Which is funny because that's a game like that should be running. And so I'm not one of those 60 frames or bust people, but a game like that should be running 60 frames.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a cartoon almost. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a 2D, and don't get me wrong, there's a lot of cool graphical stuff going on, but it's a 2D Metroidvania. We should be able to figure out how to do this with a smooth frame rate. I don't know. Like, maybe they get Panic Button on it. Panic Button's really good at making Switch ports. Get them to fix it.
Apparently, they're like joining up with Way Forward or something. The Shantae people.
Yeah.
Yes.
But the Shantae people are good at making smooth 2D platformers with simple cartoon graphics. I don't know how good they are at optimizing. Because I don't think Shantae is particularly taxing on system resources.
But yeah, that was the I know that I've been kind of following the Kickstarter updates because I want to know what a patch is. And yeah, that first patch was like, here's what we're fixing. And it's going to take a little while for those Switch fixes to come in. We're sorry. Please understand. The usual Nintendo executive, bowing and please understand.
It feels weird. I know it's a cultural thing, but it feels weird to me. Like, you don't have to bow. It's just game release, But yeah.
Yeah, it's...
We're delaying Animal Crossing by 6 months. Please understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes those cultural things don't translate super well. Like, I was raised. I mean, I am Indian, of Indian descent, and one custom in like Indian culture is that you don't disrespect books. So if you drop a book or you accidentally kick a book, then the custom is to touch the book with your palm and then put your palm to your forehead as a sign of like almost like an apology or like a sign of respect to the book. So I did so involuntarily after a while growing up doing it, and I started doing it in front of my white friends when I was a teenager, and they thought I was fucking insane. So yeah, cultural stuff doesn't always translate super, super well, but I make a lot of leeway for it because I know that old habits die hard.
Yeah, ingrained. I get that.
Yeah,
so what were we talking about?
We went from me talking about video games, and that's all I really have been playing. Yeah, just a lot of FF14 because I decided to myself, you know what? I'm going to save some money. I'm going to play one game. It's going to be a very long game. It will only cost me like $30 every 3 months or whatever it costs to get 3 6-month things. But
yeah, really good for that. Honestly, if you ever want to just get absorbed in a game and just let it take up all your time for a long time, MMOs are really good for that.
Speaking of long games, I last night, after 55 hours, completed Judgment.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. The last boss was kind of bullshit. I beat it. So, Judgment is actually somewhat related to the topic we're going to be talking about today, which is these urban open world games. But it's a little bit of a strange entry point into talking about the genre, because it wasn't really, it's not really a GTA clone as much as it is Shenmue, but not shitty.
Ooh, shots fired.
Yeah, sorry, Shenmue 3 fans. Fans of Shenmue's 1 and 2.
Well, I won't even align myself with Shenmue 3 anymore, but I'll still quasi-defend the Dreamcast ones.
That's fair. I haven't actually played Shenmue. I've just heard they're not great and haven't aged well. But if you were into Shenmue, no disrespect to you. Unless you funded Shenmue 3. Why would you do that?
I did not.
Kind of questionable to be like, hey, this game is being brought to you by, and go ahead and kickstart it.
Anyway, so Judgment is, for those of you who are familiar with Yakuza, I would say Judgment is to Yakuza as L.A. Noire is to Grand Theft Auto. It's the version where you play on the right side of the law and you investigate crimes. In this case, you're playing as a private eye, and you're investigating a bunch of crimes linked to a series of serial murders in Tokyo. And as you investigate these serial murders, you discover that they're linked to a wider conspiracy. And then you take it upon yourself to take down the people behind this conspiracy. So I'm being very vague about the plot because it's a recent game and I don't want to spoil it. But it has sort of the same story structure as a Yakuza game, where you uncover a mystery as you go through the story. But in this case, you're an active participant in solving that mystery instead of just kind of going from place to place and beating people up. In any case, as far as how this relates to the broader genre of urban open world games, it's set in a very small but dense open world neighborhood, I guess you could say. It's about 20 blocks of the fictional equivalent of Kabukicho in Japan, which is called Kamurocho in the game. And I mentioned earlier about changing the names of things to make them more palatable. The Yakuza,
how does it handle like the detecting, if that makes sense? Like, I've never really found a good, like, there's been a lot of detecting games out there, right? Like everything from, like, what is that? Like that Murdered Soul Suspect to like Heavy Rain. But I've never really felt like a detective in any game. Even like the Batman games where you go into detective vision or whatever, you know? How does it handle that?
Okay. So just to finish the previous thought, it's set in sort of this in this very dense map where there's a lot to do, but it's not very big. So and there are no cars to drive, so you don't really have as much freedom as you would in a GTA game. You're just but you do sort of have all these mini games and side activities. Anyway, to answer your point about your question about the detecting, it's not very good. It doesn't solve the problem. It kind of leads you by the nose. I will say, you do get to feel a bit like a detective in terms of trying to predict where the story's going, or selecting the right dialogue options in certain contexts. But I will say that eventually you stop feeling like a detective, and it's not so much the mechanics, because the detective mechanics are never good in the game that cause you to start feeling like that. It's the way the story goes.
Okay.
Eventually the player character, I don't want to say loses agency, but essentially stuff just starts getting fed to him instead of him using his brains to figure stuff out. And that's a little disappointing.
Yeah, it doesn't feel detective-y to me.
It's not a very detective-y game. It's basically Yakuza with slightly different side stuff.
Okay.
So if you don't like the Yakuza games, I would not recommend Judgment. But if you like the Yakuza games, I think it's a really nice change of pace. I liked it overall.
Are they as weird as the Yakuza games, though?
Is Judgment as weird as the Yakuza games?
Yeah.
I actually am going to say no. It's not as weird. Okay. Let me qualify that. The main plot is a lot less weird. It's a lot more grounded than the Yakuza games. The side content starts off more grounded, but by midway through the game becomes about as ridiculous.
So is this more for fans? I guess. I mean, I know you probably like it because of Yakuza, but is this more to get new people into it, or is this like a spin-off, or what were they kind of aiming for with this game? You think?
I have no idea what they're aiming for because it is very much.
When you first started talking about it, I remember looking it up and I was like, "Huh, looks like something."
It's a spin-off. It has none of the same characters as the Yakuza games. Some characters from the Yakuza games I think are referenced very, very obliquely, but none of the same characters. You don't need to have played a Yakuza game at all to understand what's going on in Judgment. So I don't really know what the point of this is, because they are making more Yakuza games. They're rebooting the series with a different protagonist.
I was going to say, because I haven't played it, but apparently 6 was the end for... Yeah, the current character.
Yeah, the way they've written it, there's no way they could continue on from 6, and they have announced a reboot. So, yeah, I don't know what Judgment is, really. Like I said, it's kind of the LA Noire to Yakuza's GTA. It's an interesting game and kind of an interesting way to push forward the genre, because I think these kinds of games where you really get to intimately know a space lend themselves very well to putting in slightly different mechanics. So I think they could put slightly different investigative mechanics in the game and have it be a little more fulfilling. But, Yakuza didn't have investigative mechanics. You were just going around beating people up. I think you can add different mechanics into these kinds of games and have them still be fulfilling to play. So yeah, that's Judgment. As far as it relates to the genre more broadly, like I said, putting you in these really densely packed spaces is a very different approach to GTA. Like I said, it's more from the Shenmue lineage. But I think eventually these things sort of start cross-pollinating, and you see some open world games that are more GTA-like kind of shrink down the map, maybe be a little denser. You might see games that more from like the Shenmue lineage kind of allow you to drive around and do stuff, like say Deadly Premonition, where you can hop in a car. So yeah, it's interesting to see that cross-pollination going on. Bones, my understanding is that you've been playing Saints Row 2.
Yes, hello, sorry. So last night I spent a couple hours revisiting Saints Row 2 and 3. I will not call it the third, fuck off. I replayed those in preparation for our main discussion topic for today. I'm mostly going to talk about Saints Row 2 because I have a lot more experience with it, and also it's just a better game.
Oh yeah, it's such a better game than Saints Row 3.
Yeah.
Sorry, Saints Row 3 fans.
Yeah. So here's the fun.
It's just a shame that I'm sorry. It's just a shame that this, no matter how you try to fix it, the Saints Row 2 PC port is abysmal.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I
so bad.
That. Yeah.
Oh, I played it on PC. The controls are garbage.
Yeah.
I beat the game.
I'm sorry to hear that.
It got to the point where I got to the open world after the first mission, and then the timing on the game was so bad that apparently it was much faster for me to walk than to drive a car. It's made no sense.
All the problems it had, the controls were definitely the most noticeable.
Yeah, I think you have to press. I think by default, instead of right-clicking to aim down sights, you use the V key. It's really weird.
Yeah, but I'm sorry. Go ahead. I just wanted to clarify that. Probably why I haven't played Saints Row 2 is because the PC version is bad.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I can't speak to the PC versions because I only ever played them on either of them on 360. But I had heard about the PC port being bad. So y'all will back me up anyway. But I will just provide a very quick bit of context to my history with this series. Like I actually got and played Saints Row 3 first. I was in high school at the time in 2011, and I got it for Christmas, like very shortly after launch. And because I had been interested in the series for a while, and I was just pretty unimpressed with it and stopped playing it pretty quickly. And then like the next summer, I saw that Saints Row 2 was really cheap as just a download directly off of Xbox Live Arcade. So I got that. I got really into it.
I would go ahead and guess that I think a lot of people probably got back into Saints Row 1, 2, and maybe 3 after Saints Row 4 kind of set the world on fire. Because I remember them selling a lot of packages and weird things like that. I don't think you're alone there.
Yeah, I know it was definitely before 4 came out because I know I got 3 at launch and that was my first one. But
has anybody actually played the original Saints Row?
I have.
I played the demo of the first one. Yeah.
You missed nothing by not playing it. It is a GTA clone in the 1/1,000,000th degree. It is very, very much like it takes the almost story beats from GTA. Yeah,
it's extremely cheap and generic, and
yes,
yeah.
The only thing I remember from that is there was this great video of someone showing Saints Row glitches, like to song.
It was
like one was car couldn't move because you suddenly were escaped from it there. And then there was another glitch where you were too close to a wall and the car door just never broke off, so it just kept going. And then the last one was you were in the sky for some reason. Like, you clipped out so badly you flew into the sky and you could, like, shoot people from the ground. It was just ridiculous. All in song. It was actually pretty hilarious.
Nice.
Yeah, you have to share that with us.
Yes. For the link dump. So I booted up Saints Row 2 and I started with my continuous like just free roam playthrough, and just immediately just everything, it's been a while, but I clicked back into everything really quickly and easily. Like Saints Row 3 changes some of the basic controls, like it goes from using face buttons for driving to the triggers, and I never liked that feeling as much personally. I prefer using A and X for the driving, because I'm not good at driving controls in games. I've never really glommed onto racing games or anything like that, but the driving controls in Saints Row 2 always worked really well for me. And but yeah, just immediately it's like, okay, I hijacked the first car next to me and it had 2 people, so now I'm doing the hostage taking minigame. And then when I fail at the hostage taking minigame, I crash my car into another car that also has 2 people, so I can just continue the hostage taking minigame.
Yeah.
And then and it's just like, it's a continuous loop of, if I fuck up on that, I can just do it again really easily. And it's just such a thrilling, elemental, like, fun experience of blasting down the streets, taking sharp turns, getting into shootouts with the police, and then all the different, like, mini games that are very easy to find on the map. Mayhem, Septic Avenger, insurance fraud. Insurance fraud is fucking iconic. Yeah, all of that is just, it's very straightforwardly easy to access and play, and it's just very, very fun in this purely arcadey kind of way. And Saints Row 3 just took all of that out for no reason, because they wanted to chase more of the, like, straight GTA kind of style for a little while, and that just never really appealed to me. Like I said, I tried GTA games, like, intermittently at other people's houses, and I just didn't find it as fun. It never controlled as well. It never played as fun for me.
See, in Saints Row 3, the story becomes much more outlandish than the GTA games by comparison, but they scaled back the weird, like, gameplay stuff.
Yeah, the gameplay is much less interesting, and admittedly, a part of that is they rebuilt and redesigned a whole new city, so I get why more resources had to go into that. And then Saints Row 4 makes up for that a little bit.
Superpowers.
Saints Row 4 goes into the prototype Infamous thing, which is fine, but it's a whole other thing. Yeah. But yeah, I think Saints Row 2 is the best, like, balance of the overall series. I also have a case for the story mode, but I don't know if we need to get into that.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah.
Because I think the stories are a large part, surprisingly, for an open world game, what attracts people to them. Because we always hear about the sandbox and stuff, but we also hear about like the iconic story moments, like say in San Andreas, where CJ returns to the hood, or like like in these games where like a bit, or in Vice City where Lance betrays Tommy.
Mhm.
Like these are big iconic story moments that a lot of people know of.
Yeah.
So yeah, feel free. Let's get into the story of Saints Row 2.
Okay. So GTA 4 was the first GTA I ever played. I've never gone earlier than that. And yeah, I've had this firm thesis for the last like 8 or something years that Saints Row 2 is a better attempt at doing a serious crime sandbox story than any Grand Theft Auto game. And I stand by that.
Up until 5, I'd probably say yes. I would definitely.
I can't speak to 5. I haven't played much of it. But I'm not.
I got about a third of the way through 5, and there are things about it that I like, but the frustration's kind of we'll get into that. Anyway, Jones, you were saying, sorry?
But yeah, so Saints Row 2's hook is that your character got caught in an explosion at the end of Saints Row 1, and no one really cares about Saints Row 1, but that hook lends itself really well to the idea of like, oh, this city has been completely transformed, it's been gentrified, it's been seized by this powerful corporate culture while you were in a coma, and you have to re-enter this unfamiliar world and build up your power base from nothing. And I think that's just like that just works as a really satisfying hook, and like the more power you build, you can't do everything as soon as you get into the city, but the way the progression system works is, I don't think it's overly limiting, and it moves quickly enough that it just works really well. But beyond that, like, okay, so so I can't deny that a big part of my fondness for the Saints Row 2 story mode, like when I was first played as a teenager in high school, was like they had a lot of like very, very edgy set pieces that appealed to my teenage sensibilities. Like all of the conflicts with each of the rival gangs that you meet, the like Metalhead Brotherhood, the casually racist Voodoo Gang, and the Yakuza. They always have these like escalating grudge match kind of moments. Like, so spoiler alert for literally a 10-year-old game for a second. The Brotherhood storyline climaxes with you kidnapping the leader's girlfriend, locking her in the trunk of a car, and then leaving that car in a motor crush monster truck rally kind of thing. Just that's really fucked up, and you can feel you can feel the weight of that brutality, and like you understand how much what you've done has hurt the other person and why they hate you and just need to do anything to destroy you. But also it doesn't feel disproportionate because of the horrible things that they've done to your gang members. Similarly, in the Yakuza storyline, Johnny Gat's girlfriend gets killed with a katana, and his vengeance for that is to bury the leader of the Yakuza alive.
Yikes.
It's just I think it does a really, really good job of capturing that this is not a world it's not for good people, and it's not for pleasant lives or long lives. And it does that in a way without being just constantly misanthropic and obnoxious in the same way that I feel that Rockstar games tend to be. Like the characters are quirky and endearing, and you get to have things like when you ride around in your car with your NPCs, they will always fight with you over what the radio is playing, and I love that.
Pierce especially, because Pierce. The joke about Pierce is that he likes music that is completely out of step with his tough guy persona.
Yeah.
So he always wants to play like pop radio.
Mm-hmm.
He's a fun dude. I actually don't remember most of the plot of Saints Row 2 because I played it I want to say back in 2012 or 2013. So it's been a while since I've really delved into the plot. I remember it being a lot edgier than Saints Row the Third.
Yes, that's definitely true. Well, Saints Row 3 is like, yeah, they try to be more serious but also less dark. But also it does things like Hulk Hogan, notorious racist Hulk Hogan, is playing a Mexican wrestler, and he's the final villain. So that's
a whole pile. I'm not even sure how you unpack that.
Yeah.
I don't even know what to make of that.
Yeah. That's questionable at best.
Yeah. I will say, like, Saints Row the Third is because it's a little more over the top. How do I put this? I kind of remember, sort of the weird stuff from Saints Row the Third, but I don't remember the overall plot at all.
Yeah. Yeah, Saints Row 3 does shine in some individual things. Like, I think the character customizer is probably the best of the series. Like, that's when they really go overboard on, you can do fucking anything. Yerk, you can be colored like Dr. Manhattan. Do whatever you want.
I think that's going to be kind of a common theme about all the games we're going to talk about today, though. I remember more of, like, the moments in the game than the actual plots, you know, because the plots are, especially in a lot of these open world games, the plots are kind of handed to you in such a weird way. You know, some people might race through the story, you know, and like it's like Skyrim or any of those other, you know, vast multi-hour games where the way two people experience it could be totally different. I might do every side quest before I even touch the main quest, and that's probably why I don't remember any of it. You know, like
but no, that's fair. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think I remember the stories well when I'm in the midst of them, but they fade away within 2 weeks of having played them.
Yeah.
And they're not necessarily bad stories, just that there's so much other stuff in the games that they kind of get overshadowed in retrospect.
Yeah, I think a lot of what I remember is more like individual missions, or even sometimes I just remember like mechanics of some games, you know. But yeah, that's kind of where a lot of my, you know, memories of open world games tend to go. Less about the exact story beats or, you know, who betrayed who or stuff like that. Like I completely forgot about that one until you said it. You know, so there's a lot about that I think that people remember. And of course, it's like a recency thing. Even though the stories and the games are totally different, Saints Row, Grand Theft Autos, they all tend to blend in my mind. You know, I'm like, is this the one where, you know, that this crazy thing happened? Yeah, maybe not. But I'm not really good at like keeping in mind, you know, who exactly betrayed who or whatever like that.
Sure. Yeah.
What I tend to remember more than the actual individual story beats is kind of like what the story was trying to say. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So I remember, you know, L.A. Noire being this kind of almost takedown of boomer nostalgia.
Yeah.
And I remember Vice City being a game about how, like, sleaze in the underworld corrupt people. I remember San Andreas being a game about not losing touch with your roots. But if you ask me to list out the individual story beats or the overall outline of the plot in any of those games,
right,
I would not be able to tell you that.
Yeah.
It's strange because these stories do often have something interesting or profound to say, but we forget how we get there.
Yeah. No, that's very fair. Yeah, so I would say in that sense, the thesis of Saints Row 2 is like, it's basically, yeah, I would say the thesis is like corporate crime and street crime are
one and the same.
I would say that they're both destructive socially, but that one controls the world more, and by the proxy of that, like that positions the other to be the revolutionary counter force to the first.
Yeah, it's fair. See, for me the thesis of Saints Row 2 is spraying things with poop is fun.
Yes, that's also very fair. Yeah. Oh, also the fuzz mini game, which is not super aged well, but like the just general hook of like, yeah, you're exploiting a shitty reality show to be a fake abusive cop is very entertaining, at least. You know.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I think I can get on board with it because it's satirical.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I would say it's satire that does work, but it is still like uncomfortable.
Yeah. A lot of these games haven't aged like super duper well.
yeah, I would say like, okay, so one of my biggest things about all of these kind of open world crime games has always been the treatment of women generally, but especially the treatment of sex workers. And Saints Row does not age well on that front. It doesn't really treat sex workers any differently than Grand Theft Auto does, and it doesn't generally, like, women are mostly there to be brutalized to motivate men, and that's not great. But
yeah,
so this is a thing that's always stuck out in my head. When I was really young, like 10, 11, something like that, like I found out that my Norwegian neighbor Marcus, who I was good friends with at the time, his mom, he had a single mom, and she was doing the single mom stuff. She does kind of struggle to support him and her, and when she would want to get like a luxury thing to treat her son, she would think too hard about it because she didn't have the energy to. And I remember having this very awkward conversation with her, trying to talk to her about, like, so this game that you bought your son, like, does give you a lot of free reign to brutalize women if he wants to, and I just want you to be aware of that. just incorporate that into your decision making if you so choose. That was important to me even as like a middle schooler.
Yeah, even with my kid, I've thrown on GTA 5 occasionally and stuff, and I'll let him play a lot of games I maybe shouldn't. He plays a lot of shooters and stuff like that, but as long as I kind of can, like, say okay. But GTA really always kind of felt like it kind of goes way more into an uncomfortable place in those regards, and it does it in a way to be edgy, but I think most people would agree that after a while that kind of really, I think a lot about remember when Dave Chappelle said, like, one of the reasons he quit doing comedy is because he couldn't tell if people were laughing for the right reasons, I guess is what he said. I feel like that's a lot of GTA. Like, I don't know if the people who are supposed to be getting, hey, this is satire, are getting it, or if they think it's funny to blow up Steve Jobs. So I've always felt a little uncomfortable.
To be fair, it is still funny to blow up Steve Jobs specifically, but
or blow up Mark Zuckerberg in 5.
5, yeah. So I don't know. I've always kind of thought that about GTA is like, okay, well, you're saying this is all satire, and that's all well and good, but are the people I know you can't control your audience, but I've never really felt like with GTA especially that message is getting understood by the audience.
I completely agree. Satire needs to be a very conscious and deliberate, like, instrument that you use, and Rockstar has not always been good at using that in the same way that, like, South Park struggles.
What I'd say, especially about, like, I'll confess right now, part of the reason I stopped playing GTA 5 was because I grew kind of tired of its misogyny. And I wouldn't say it's so much the fact that you can, like, to put it bluntly, go kill a prostitute, because you can go kill anybody, whatever. It's more like the story kind of treated everything with the same level of contempt and nihilism. And so, actual bad shit got lumped in the same with, let's say, ardent feminists. That's not... That's not great. Like, it's just not... It's weird playing a game where like, every female character is just a neg. And for all the shitty, like, bad representation of women that's in a lot of these other games, at least the very few female characters there are have some dimension other than being terrible. So I don't know. That's probably right. That's one of the things that just kind of soured me on GTA 5. And eventually I was just like, mechanically, this is not fun enough for me to put up with whatever this is.
Saints Row always had room for lady gangsters from really early on, which was always refreshing. It doesn't totally make up for everything else, but it's a start, and Rockstar literally didn't get there until Red Dead 2, as far as I know.
There's like this one, like, okay, in GTA 5, you can hire lady gangsters as part of your crew, but they barely talk. It's not much to it.
I don't know if anybody else does this, but do you have, like, in your mind, like, a list of games that you've, like, tried and given up on like more than any other game, because like that's GTA 5 for me. I probably
absolutely.
installed it a dozen times. I'm not even making up, and quit every time. And I think what Merve is saying is exact. The game has like no heart, like no soul. Like there's not anybody who's actually a good person who's just trying to make it work. It's
like
very,
arguably Franklin, but
I mean, at times, but then he does some shit, and you're like, okay, well, no. I mean, like he's supposed to be the good one, but like he's just as in the rest of it as the rest of them. I don't know. Like I think that game just doesn't work for me on so many levels, and it's because of the nihilism. It just everybody's a miserable person. Everybody that you interact with is awful. There's not a real redemption arc for me, or like any kind of like, this feels good to, tell this character's story. Everything you do, even the mini games feel awful, and every time you drop in on Trevor, it's just like, God, I don't want to play this guy. He's so annoying,
he's the worst. I like, no disrespect to Stephen Ogg's performance, which is fantastic, but I just don't find him to be an entertaining character.
Absolutely.
At all.
Yeah.
From his intro, where like you edgily, stomp a man to death, like it just goes from there. It just never feels like it has anything to say other than, look, he's a crazy bad person who was betrayed, and he's on a, but
like their betrayal in the previous Grand Theft Auto games, like in Vice City, San Andreas, it's there, and they still manage to tell. And those stories are irreverent. Don't get me wrong, but they still manage to tell a story where you kind of want to root for somebody.
Right.
Yeah. That's what I was trying to say, is that like Saints Row has a lot of flaws as a series, but it sells you on the characters generally, and I think that's what GTA kind of misses some of the time. Again, I haven't played earlier than 4, so limited experience.
Actually, the funny thing is, I've only played like maybe an hour of 4. I played it on my friend's PlayStation way back when. I actually played it back when I was living in New York, and it was really fucking surreal to walk around places in the game where I had walked around before, or like walked around regularly, and just like shoot people and run them over. And I was like, this is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Luckily, I played GTA 5, or what I did play of it, before I moved to LA, and also GTA 5 is a really poor representation of LA geographically, so it's not as bad. But I'm wondering, if I were to go fire up GTA 5 on PS3 right now, if I would feel uncomfortable playing it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me.
It's always been one of those things. I think the cities are recreated well. I would prefer if they went, instead of going for one, remaking the city. I really like what Vice City did, and just kind of like, okay, this feels like Miami, this feels like a town I've never been to, but it just feels right in some ways. But I know people love that one-to-one, hey, this is the actual city and stuff like that.
When you go for like design realism, it can be contradictory to some of the other tonal and aesthetic choices you're making.
Yeah, I think that's definitely what bothers me at times. I wouldn't say bothers me, but it's definitely what I notice is like, okay, well, this city is lovingly recreated down to like, this is where like this actual taxi stand is, but then these people are all kind of almost caricatures and stuff like that. I like, there's been so many urban open world games that I feel like almost want to say something and then pull it back. I don't know if it's for gameplay reasons, if it's for whatever, but I don't know. It's going to sound bad because I know people have talked about, I don't know, certain types of gamers and stuff, but I've always gotten the feeling that the kind of people who love these games are almost like, I don't want to say, like antisocial or something, but like, it feels like it creates a world, and it creates a world based on stereotypes, it doesn't do much to break out of that.
You want me to get personal for a second? This is,
sure.
Yeah. So
personal podcast.
Yeah, I have a cousin. I will not name him, but I have a cousin who was like one of my sources for like me trying GTA games, including 5. And he's in jail now because he stole thousands of dollars from his own parents, and he has like severe addiction issues and like antisocial problems and all sorts of shit. And I'm deeply empathetic to him. Like, I understand some of why he is the way he is for sure. But at the same time, like that is literally an example of a problem person who was a product of like not exclusively, but in part a product of like the cultural stuff that he was consuming. I sincerely believe that.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I don't, you know, because I'm always like kind of like knee jerk against making that kind of generalization, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I remember the bad old days where if you played violent video games, you were, you know, the going to be like the downfall of Western civilization.
No, yeah, no, that's the thing. Like Jack Thompson was full of shit. 100%. Right. He was not contributing anything positive to society. But at the same time, like a basic sociologist will tell you, yeah, the culture you consume will influence you. Like you can be thoughtful about that and conscious of it and all that stuff. But that is just how humans and culture works. Like culture is an expression of us, and in return it affects us. Like that's just yeah.
The way that it sort of gets put sometimes is most of this stuff won't really affect most people, but it will affect some people.
Yes. Yeah.
And like, if you know that something affects you, it's kind of incumbent upon you to be cognizant of that.
Yeah. Yeah, like I wouldn't necessarily assume, like, let's say you're a bad person if you say that your favorite game is GTA 5, but if you say, like, I love GTA, it's my favorite series ever, and it's basically all I play, I would probably think, okay, there's probably something there that's, like, at a social level. You know, I'm serious.
Sorry for cutting you off there, but yeah, like, literally, like, 20 million people or something played GTA 5. I'm sure the majority are not extremely toxic, socially stunted people.
Right.
But there are some.
And of course, the thing that I always would bring up is Call of Duty might be the same argument.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh yeah. That game is. I mean, that game is hyper popular. You're obviously going to have your share of chuds playing it.
Mm-hmm. It's also such blatant military-industrial complex propaganda, but that's a whole other story.
So okay, to that point,
it is.
It really okay. It really depends from game to game, because some of the games in that series are really deeply cynical about the military-industrial complex. I would say like the better examples of super jingoistic games would be Medal of Honor and Homefront. Those are like the super, those are like the super jingoistic military shooters.
That is fair about Homefront, but I don't. That's the thing. Like, I don't think the texture of the story mode will always outweigh the overall like framework of the game and the effects it has of just like of gamifying military combat and all these things.
And with that, I was going to say, I mean, I don't know how they track this, but there is a disturbingly, well, I wouldn't say a high percentage, but a disturbing percentage of people who don't play the single player.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, true. They just right into the multiplayer. That's a good way to.
And then they so obsessively play it that they out-level everyone so quickly.
Yeah, that's just not fun for anyone else. No. Remember when multiplayer games didn't have progression? That was fun. You just hop in, do whatever.
I'm still trying to talk my way around this thesis, though. So with what I'm trying to say about GTA, because I don't want people. I play them, I do.
Yeah.
But there's something about the nihilism and the cynical nature of the game, and like the way it presents so many characters to you as just, this guy's full of shit. It's like South Park, I think, is a good analogy. But imagine if South Park didn't have, like a Butters or like a Randy at his good moments, or you know what I mean, like. It's hard to explain, but I just always felt like that game is something that people want to go see. I knew all these people were like this, and that game kind of reinforces that for those kind of people who are looking for that. And I think the other people who are playing it and looking for the satire don't necessarily get enough of the satire to really enjoy the game either. So it's kind of like this weird empty field of, well, why is this funny? Why is it funny that my daughter in GTA 5 is going to do a porn shoot to make daddy mad? I don't know. I don't know what that says about like the people who really, really enjoy that stuff. But
not even a joke. It's played straight. It's so weird. I don't know what to make, like GTA 5 especially. And I don't want to say it's like a Dan Houser thing, because he's written other games that aren't like that. So I don't know what it is about GTA 5 or GTA series more broadly in particular that brings that aspect out of him. I don't know. But you're right, to the point of these games that you mentioned earlier, these games often look like they're teetering on the edge of saying something and then don't say anything. Like the prime example of that for me is Watch Dogs, which also falls into some of the same nihilism traps. I can't speak to Watch Dogs 2 because I haven't played it. But in the first one, you play as Aiden Pierce with his iconic cap, and like he's a big fucking edgelord. And he's always like speaking in his gravelly voice. And he's a huge dick. So throughout most of the game, you fight essentially two low-level gangs. One of like poor people who live in a trailer park, and one of like poor black people who live in the projects. And this comes with some unfortunate racial implications. But what I was going to say is, eventually at the near climax of the game, which I'm going to spoil right now, so plug your ears if you want to go play Watch Dogs, you kind of meet the leader of this gang of people who live in the projects, and he goes by the name of Iraq. And the reason he got that nickname is because he served in Iraq, and when he came back from Iraq, he suffered from, I guess you could say he suffered from PTSD, and then he came to the conclusion that, the government was sending people abroad to fight, so like poor people abroad to fight the wars of the rich. And he makes this point very, very broadly, very, very passionately. And then you start to see, I've been fighting poor people the entire game instead of fighting the rich pricks who are really pulling the strings.
Right.
Like you think that's what the point of the game is, and then immediately after you defeat this guy, you get a text message kind of revealing that Iraq was driven by greed the entire time.
Yep.
And it completely deflates the entire point of the game.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
It felt so much like they wanted to, they wanted to say something and then they couldn't.
Like they just backed off from the last second. And that is a really powerful message, whether or not you agree with it, to build that up ludically, where you spend the entire game taking out poor people, and then you face off against the rich guys right at the end. Like, that's a really powerful thing to do. And then they just completely deflate it. It comes right to the edge and then doesn't say anything. So yeah, that really pissed me off.
Yeah, it didn't have a lot going on there. Watch Dogs 2 kind of course corrected, I feel like, and it's gotten me to the point where I'm legitimately excited for 3, which I probably wouldn't have ever thought. But yeah, it's one of those series, I think, where they didn't have anything they wanted to say, and so they kind of pulled the trigger and go in one direction, then backed off on it.
I think they originally wanted to say something about like information and mass surveillance.
Yeah,
that's what they originally sold it as, and then they didn't end up saying anything about that at all. Like CTOS or whatever is just a game mechanic. It's never really important to the story of the game, like thematically to the story the game is trying to tell. That must have been a really like messed up development cycle.
I think you'd probably like 2 a lot better, story-wise and thematically, and kind of where the story goes. It's very clear who the bad guys are and what they're about. But yeah, I don't know why the tone on some of these games is so hard to kind of find. It's interesting to see like what some games are able to do. But yeah, I don't think Watch Dogs 1 really even knew what it wanted to be as a game, much less tell a story of, so it's not too surprising that it ended up being nothing.
Yeah, it wants to kind of be stealthy at some point, so it presents stealth as an option, but the stealth mechanics are so half-baked that by the time you get to the insta-fail stealth missions, you just want to shoot yourself.
And then hack the planet seems cool as a concept until they're like, well, actually, most of these missions you're just going to be shooting people. well, then what's the point of all this hacking shit if I'm just gonna, basically be playing Call of Duty, the whole time?
Yeah, 90% of that game is just shooting.
Yeah.
Or driving the really poorly controlling cars.
Yeah, they all felt like they were on ice constantly.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's really funny though to like, it's like this otherwise somewhat grounded game, but you hop in the car and it's like driving around on buttered roller skates. It's hilarious. Yeah, so driving is actually obviously a big component of a lot of these games. It's weird that it became like such a big thing.
Yeah,
I guess that and it kind of goes back to where the genre came from. GTA 3 is often cited as the first game in the genre. It's not. It's the second. The first 3D open world urban crime game was Driver 2. The first Driver was just you were driving around. You couldn't even exit the car. You just were driving around a city doing driving missions. Driver 2, you were allowed to exit the car. You could fire guns, and then I guess driving became this important component going forward. I don't know. The early games in the genre, I don't know, they haven't aged super well. It's all blocky cities and shit. But it's important that we ended up on this path because, there's this Shenmue lineage where you walk around and the maps are very dense. And then there's this GTA or Driver 2 lineage where you drive around and the maps are super sparse and then you can run people over. It's great.
Yeah, I think that for my money, I remember playing GTA 1 and 2, and I never would have guessed it would have ended up where it did. Because, the series really felt like it was just going to kind of be like a kind of goofy, top-down, it felt like a throwback even at the time when it was out, story-wise and kind of gameplay-wise. It wasn't, the technological marvel. I think a lot of people have kind of nostalgia, thought back about it in time. But I never would have guessed it would have spawned what it did spawn as a genre. The roots of this whole series, I think, or the whole style of game, I think is kind of weird to me. I think finally someone it feels like it's more rooted in an Elder Scrolls or an RPG type scenario. They pasted something over, horses or cars instead of horses and stuff like that.
They've added more, I would say, almost realistic elements to the games. If you remember I've played a bit of GTA 2. I remember, you find these weird icons on the map, and it'd be here, you have a flamethrower. Go kill as many Yakuza as you can in 30 seconds. And that carried over into 3 and Vice City. But by the time it hit San Andreas, that was just, gone from the series.
Yeah.
And now in GTA 5, I couldn't imagine walking up to an icon in GTA 5 being magically granted a flamethrower and then burning people to death when Santa Monica Pier.
They have that in Trevor missions. I think they call them mayhems. It's still there.
Okay, and there are the ones
where
I think you go to the pot guy. It's try this pot, and then they get all very high and you murder 30 people.
Aliens, and clowns and stuff. Yeah, it's still there. I mean, it's. I think where GTA needs to decide is what's their goal. Super serious, super silly, satire, stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that they've reached a point where they've tried to be so many different things at once, and that's partly because previous games in the series have all done different things, and now they kind of want to do all at once, but the strength of those previous games came from being more focused.
Yeah, so. And I think they look at what everybody does this. I think they look at a game and say, well, what makes this game a hit? What made this game click with people, right? And I think, they probably do feedback groups and stuff like that. And you get some guy who says, man, I loved when I smoked weed and killed clowns. That was my favorite part of the game. They're like, well, shit, that's going to be the next 3.
To be fair, just when you say it out of context, smoking weed and killing clowns actually sounds pretty bad.
It's just whoa, what's happening? And you're still killing these people. Oh my god, they're coming. It is kind of funny. It's a really straight-laced, just broad, oh, haha, weed is funny, haha, but it's kind of funny, I guess.
It's for I don't know, I think it would be funnier without the weed if it were just clowns coming at you. The second you put drugs in there, it becomes oh, drugs are bad and they make you do weird things. And, like, it's funnier when it's just the way the world is instead of some rando hallucination.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Which, I guess, reminds me of some of the Yakuza side missions. 2 has a pretty infamous one where you, for some reason, go into a building where a bunch of gangsters are wearing diapers and you beat them all up.
Oh, yeah. So, not spoilers for Yakuza Kiwami 2. In that mission, it turns out this was like a gang boss, and he was forcing all his subordinates to participate in this fetish of his. And
shit.
Here's the really funny, almost enlightening thing it says where it ends up. At the end, the protagonist, Kiryu, after he's beat all these guys up, Kiryu says to the gang boss, it's perfectly fine for you to have this fetish. It's not fine for you to drag your subordinates into it. Do this on your own time.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Like, no, it's surprisingly enlightened. I didn't expect the story to end up here.
Yeah.
So, good for you, Kiryu. Kiryu is actually, like, weirdly enlightened sometimes. It's really funny. Because he's always like a meathead.
I think it was Zero where there's a weird stealth mission where you have to sneak to make sure you're not caught buying porn for a kid.
Weird.
Oh yeah, that was hilarious. I remember that. Yeah, and then you kind of have to, like, there are dialogue options. You have to come up with excuses for why you have the porn or something like that. It's great. Those games could be a hoot. They do a lot of weird shit. I'm trying to think what other weird shit there is. In Judgment, which I just completed, there's a guy who's like an actor who plays a hero in like tokusatsu shows. Like, you're familiar with this stuff, PT. Like, he's like the costume superhero, but he's actually bald, so he wears a wig, but he refuses A, to affix the wig properly to his head, B, he insists on calling the wig a hat and refuses to acknowledge that he's bald, and there are like 5 missions where the wind blows away his wig and you have to go chase it down. Yeah.
I haven't played any Yakuza, and I don't think I ever will. I mean, I'm like, this is just the weirdest shit.
And it's just like lots of just really weird. It's kind of clever. I know Zero was like set in the 80s, so there's a side quest where somebody got mugged because they were waiting in line for the latest like Nintendo game, like the corresponding brand. And it's basically just this huge riff on Dragon Quest. Like, you're gonna this huge line. We're gonna go buy like Fantasy Game 3, and we're gonna level up together. And I wanted to play this with my son, but it got stolen by this guy. Who was...
Then you go like from person to person, and it turns out to be like a ring of thieves.
Yes.
And I remember that. So it's interesting you bring up Yakuza 0 being set in the 80s, because Yakuza 0 kind of deals with, it's almost like LA Noir 30 years later in terms of what it's doing thematically. Like, instead of being about the underside of the dark underbelly of the post-war boom, it's the dark underbelly of the Japanese economic miracle in the 1980s. And it really works well in the Yakuza series, because Yakuza 0 is a prequel, and there's this big tower in the middle of the fictional Kamurocho, known as Millennium Tower. And that's a mainstay throughout the series. And in Yakuza 0, you find out the history of how that tower came to be, and it's kind of the plot of that game. And it involves a lot of shady land deals and murders and the like. So it's interesting to see like this big monument to like the Japanese economic miracle having been built essentially on skeletons.
Wow.
So
that's a lot.
It's interesting because you've had like 5 games where you see Millennium Tower, and then in Yakuza 0, you're like, oh wow, a lot of people got murdered, so that could be built.
Yeah, it's a war over a single little piece of property land.
Yeah,
that's
it's like this. Yeah, it's called The Empty Lot.
Yeah,
and throughout the game, you try to figure out why people care about this empty lot so much. And it's like the one piece of land that nobody's willing to give up the deed for in order to get this built. Yeah, it's sorry, we just spoiled all of Yakuza 0.
Sorry, no, dude, I really want to check these games out now. I'm the opposite of Kappa.
Yeah, fair warning. There's a lot of bullshit.
That's fine.
The main plots are kind of weird, hard-boiled Yakuza stuff, but the actual like navigation around the city and just the side quests, it's
really wacky.
It doesn't. It does not take itself seriously when it doesn't count. When it counts, yes, people are getting murdered, people are getting heavily beaten down. Yeah, there's a story, but the side quests are just sometimes completely independent of the actual game sometimes.
And they're super silly. I just last time when Gooch was on the podcast, I described Yakuza to him as The Sopranos meets Better Off Ted.
Oh my god.
That agrees with me. That's a pretty apt description.
I am sold so hard. Sorry. I know that's not much of a contribution, but
yeah, they're weird. They're weird games, but that's actually kind of a characteristic of the genre as a whole, that it balances out silly and serious. Mm-hmm. Like GTA kind of prior to 5 had a lot of silly shit in it, but also generally kind of told a serious story alongside.
It's weird. I think probably the game that nailed tone and stuff, and I do feel like this game gets somewhat of like almost a lot of nostalgia or like a lot of fond memories that maybe it didn't earn, was Sleeping Dogs. But Sleeping Dogs, I think, was probably the best example of how to get the tone right in a game. There wasn't over the top silliness, and there wasn't super grim, dark, this is the fate of the world type stuff either. I really wish that series would have got a little more extra life to it and seen what it would have been, what it would have become. Because, I mean, it's basically a kung fu movie,
Yeah, it's very much inspired by like Hong Kong action films.
Yeah, and one of the DLCs is basically Fist of Death. I mean,
Nice.
I think that was one that fell by the wayside, and there was the other one where you were a cop with a dog. You remember that one? True Crime, I think it was called.
Oh,
I think it was.
Yeah. True Crime came from the Sleeping Dogs people.
Yeah, exactly. That one also was really kind of well done. It kind of fell under the radar again because I think GTA was all people wanted to talk about at the time, and then Saints Row kind of started to sneak up. But True Crime and Sleeping Dogs, I think, were good examples of like you tell the story around an open world. You don't let the open world be the story. I think that was kind of a smart way to handle it.
Yeah. Sleeping Dogs especially, what I think is great about it is that it feels like Grand Theft Auto, but with an editor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Everything that's in Sleeping Dogs feels like it belongs in Sleeping Dogs.
Like, I think we talked about this before with RPGs, but this is kind of like true for me for open world games. If the thing that you advertise the most is how big your game world is or how many quests there are, like, to me, that's almost not a selling point anymore. Like, that used to be cool to me when I was, 17, 18, and could play a game forever. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is, 15 square miles of real, now it's like when I play GTA 5, I'm like, man, I got to drive all the way over to there. It's like, yeah. I don't like driving in real life, So I kind of wonder, like whenever people are like, oh, the game world is huge and we've got all this, we've got all that, there's 5 million side quests. And it's like, in a way, like that almost turns me off the game more than, gets me interested.
It feels more like a threat than a selling point.
Yeah. I mean, I would rather it be like Sleeping Dogs didn't have a ton of extra shit to do. I mean, it had like the little altars. I'm not sure, but like that's what I remember. It had little fights that you could get into, but it wasn't like chock full of crap to do just to have crap to do.
It was very well. I mean, there was enough to do, and the world itself was large enough but small enough to navigate. Which is kind of the problem I have with GTA 4 and 5. It's just those cities are just too damn big.
They are, yeah. And God forbid you have to go up to that northern part where it's like that the desert-ish area,
Oh,
I mean, just
what game had way too big a map for the game? LA Noire.
Yeah. Yeah. And
that,
especially because half the time you had to just drive somewhere just to do one thing and then drive right back. It kind of like smashed in your face how dumb it was that you had to drive like that. I don't know. I know driving.
The time I just accidentally ran people over. It's just so bad in that game.
One of the things I did like about Saints Row 5 is how I was like, all right, we're done with this driving shit. If you want to get to the other side of the map in 2 seconds, here's
You're
super
gonna
speed.
fucking fly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Saints Row 4, but yeah.
While you're listening to the touch.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I like that it was like, fine, we know what you guys want. Just get from one end of the map as fast as you can. Here you go. Kind of did away with some of the whole like, we got to get in the car, we got to find the radios, we got to do this. Nah, it's like, here's what's fun. And I think that's a smart thing to do, to kind of distill what's fun about these types of games, because there is fun stuff to do. It is fun just to play a giant open city and things like that, but you got to figure out that fun and balance it out with not wanting to waste people's time in a way with, just here's more shit to do.
It's hard to recommend GTA 3 these days because the controls are just terrible.
Mm-hmm.
It's clunky, but I think that is the one that I admire the most because it's kind of lean.
Yeah.
It's 3 parts of the city. It's sort of big. I mean, not nearly as big as the current stuff. And the cars are, and they drive, and the radio stations are funny, and the humor isn't as blunt and stupid as the later games.
Right.
Yeah, Life Invader is the world's worst joke. So
yeah, it really is.
Anyway, continue.
But yeah, it's just, this was the thing when people thought the Chatterbox radio was the funniest thing ever, or just stuff like that where it's simple and it just yes, the foot controls are terrible. But also that game featured some stuff that kind of went away from the later games, in that there were ways you could finish missions in alternative fashions. It wasn't every mission, but sometimes you could. I mean, one of the most infamous ones is this otherwise really irritating one where you're basically following this guy to the shipyard to kill him. But instead, you can actually hijack a taxi, park right up next to the bar where you're gonna pick him up. He'll get into your car, you'll drive to the location, and then you kill him.
That's actually really clever.
And there were a few things like that where you could do that in GTA 3, which just kind of went away with the other ones because they need to be so realistic. One of the things that just really turns me off 5 was there's at the very beginning of the mission where you're in the loan sharks, office. And I just decided, okay, I'm going to test the controls. What's going on? And I ended up kicking the garage door. And then mission failed because I caused a disturbance.
Yeah, stuff like that is so frustrating.
That's
bullshit.
Getting the cops called on you for accidentally half touching a cop car while you're making a crazy turn during a mission. Then you got to do 20 minutes of trying to avoid the cops. There's just so much stuff like that just feels so unnecessary. And I know people love that though. I mean, people are like, oh man, can you believe that? I think a lot of that is the idea of emergent gameplay, right? What's fun for you and fun for me might not always be the same thing, but emergent gameplay to me implies a little bit more than, like you're saying, I bumped into somebody and it failed the mission. That's not fun. That's not gameplay.
I thought 4 had some really ludicrous cop stuff to it, where you're shooting the pigeons, which by the way is their big joke. Spoiler: shooting all 100 gets you nothing.
Yeah,
nothing.
Got him.
It'll get you a trophy, I suppose, or an achievement. But beyond that, nothing. Oh, and by the way, if you shoot a pigeon with your gun, you'll immediately go to 1 star because, oh my god, something happened. And it's like, seriously, that's not fun.
Yeah.
If you pull out a gun pretty much anywhere that doesn't have open carry in real life, you don't even have to fire it and people will be scared and call the cops on you. But, this is a video game. I should just be able to shoot pigeons whenever I want.
Especially if that's what the game is literally making you do to go anywhere. You have to do it. It's not there's not that pigeon part, but there's a lot of other parts where it's like, well, basically I have to go get wanted right now. And then the game makes you run around like a fool for 20 minutes because it's what it wanted you to do. And you got to lose the cops. That's not fun to me. I was excited about when they announced the heist because I thought, well, cool, maybe I can finally do stuff like rob a bank, right? But in a smart way, where if I can plan it out and I can do this, I can do that. Like maybe the cops never even get called, and I skip all that bullshit about like, okay, well now lose the cops for 20 minutes. No, all the high stuff is still scripted. You always set off the alarm. You always, you know, what I mean, it's the idea of planning a heist to me is really cool. I think the online version does it somewhat, but yeah, the actual heists as they hit in GTA, I think were not fun to me. I hyped them up in my head, and then they were not at all what I was hoping they were.
Yeah, GTA 5 was kind of disappointing in terms of emergent gameplay all around. It doesn't, and this is a problem that a lot of people have voiced with Red Dead Redemption 2, is that these games punish creativity, and that's like especially an incongruity between the more sandboxy stuff, where you can be creative and all sorts of weird shit happens, and the main missions where being creative is an insta-fail.
Yes, yeah.
Like these two design philosophies are at odds with each other. And I don't want to see open world games, especially these urban open world games, continue along that path. I want my creativity and my bullshit to be rewarded.
Yeah. I think a lot of RPGs have gotten that now. I think there's a lot of RPGs where it's like, okay, go ahead and talk your way through this, or go ahead and, you know what I mean? And I don't think that the GTA games have quite caught up, or the open world games otherwise have quite caught up in the mindset of like, okay, well, maybe if this guy does this or completes this mission objective or takes his time and does this first, we're not going to punish him by having the cops called or by having, this character later on do this certain thing. I just think that that's something that now I kind of think people expect from modern games almost, to let the player play how they want to and then reward them if they make smart choices. But I don't think GTA is a fan of that.
There's been, and this has been kind of a thing in games for ages though, like allowing for people to kind of break the script.
Right.
Like, you can even go back to the original Deus Ex, which, sorry, I'm going to spoil right now. There's one part where you're confronting like one of the resistance fighters on the plane, and then there's that agent alongside there who's like telling you to shoot him.
Yeah.
Her name's Ana Navarra, and you can kill Ana Navarra on the plane, and the game will. The story will take that into account and let you do that. And I wish that GTA games kind of follow that same philosophy of just like, you can kill this guy right now.
Yeah, I completely agree.
4 had, I know 4 had something with you can kill either this guy or that guy, but it didn't really affect very much at the end.
Yeah, it's that. And I say this as a much bigger fan of that stuff than y'all still are, but like it's that telltale thing of, well, one of these two people can die, but it doesn't really make a difference.
Oh,
yeah.
That made me so mad. Like the first episode of the first season of Walking Dead had that choose which character gets to die,
and then the other one dies anyway. Yeah,
like their third episode.
Yeah,
it's like boo. It's awful.
I'll defend that, but that's not our topic right now. So.
Yeah. I mean, like, I'm not expecting these kinds of games to implement full player choice or complicated dialogue systems, or even more RPG elements. All I want is for them to kind of accommodate the way players actually play.
Yeah.
I think they've gotten a little too scripted.
And keep in mind that there are more interesting ways to do gameplay ideas of player impact than just individual isolated scripted trackable things like that.
Yeah, it's like, I think they're almost thinking of these things in terms of like decision trees. Like you pick either option A or option B, and that's the right thing to do for certain kinds of gameplay scenarios. Mm-hmm. But for others, you kind of just have to have like a continuum of things that you could possibly do, and the game will respond, like, be programmed to kind of respond accordingly.
Yeah.
I think these games sort of take more of a cue from immersive sims, like your Dishonored's, your Deus Ex's, your praise, etc.
Yeah. Sorry, this might seem random, but I hope it'll make sense. The example I always give is that Silent Hill 2, which is a survival horror game that came out in 2001 and can run on a toaster today, is like has a really complex data tracking system of like player minute second to second decisions of just interact with your environment and your items and all that stuff. If Silent Hill 2 can do that, you can do that.
Yeah. I wonder how much of them just want to. Maybe they just don't care. It sounds cynical,
but that sucks.
Yeah.
I don't want to say devs are lazy or whatever. It's just that they've prioritized things that I'm not sure really add to the experience as much as they think.
Yeah, GTA has a lot of that. It tracks how many footsteps you take and how much of this and how much of that, but it doesn't play into the game at all usually. I know you lose weight or things like that, but even that kind of feels like I don't even think that's as big as it used to be.
I think the ultimate example of this, and I know we're going sort of outside the genre, is Red Dead Redemption 2's shrinking horse scrota.
Oh yeah.
Oh god.
The horse's balls shrivel up when they get cold. Who's looking for that? Who cares? Why is this a thing?
I don't know. I think I'm being I might be sounding a little bit overly negative on GTA, but I appreciate them for kind of how I appreciate stuff like Skyrim and a bunch of other games for doing stuff that I would say at least takes chances, or kind of technically impressive or things like that. But it's hard for me because I think the more I think about it, the less and less I like the games, and I wonder why I buy them every single time they come out, or I let myself get tricked in with Red Dead Redemption 2. I knew I wasn't gonna like it, and then I read pages after pages of people, even on the Avocado, who usually has a pretty, I don't want to say cynical, but they have definitely a way of looking at games, and I let myself get
more discerning, let's say. But yeah.
Did you say something?
Oh no!
Oh,
I thought my sound had cut out. I was really confused for a second.
But I let myself get excited all over again, and I ended up getting it, and I'll never get past Chapter 5. That game will sit there unfinished forever. It's just kind of a sad thing because I wanted to like it, I was ready to like it, all that other stuff that I've always said and done with GTA games or open world games, and there it is, and I'll get excited about the next one too. So I don't know what that says about me or the games or what, but
I think GTA 5 killed me on that. I was like, nope, I'm good. I don't really need to play any more of these. Mm-hmm. If there's going to be more cynical and more, haha, let's go for the low-hanging joke every single time.
Yeah.
It's that. I mean, that Facebook mission in GTA 5 is just kind of one of the best examples of just how cynical and just lazy the satire is.
Yeah, I think what was weird is I felt like 4 had a lot going for it. And I feel like Nico was a better protagonist than GTA's had in a long time. I thought there was something interesting about, an immigrant and the death of the American dream, and that kind of stuff that they might have been able to work with a little bit.
There are a lot more interesting and good ideas that go into Nico. He never really landed for me, but there's something there at least.
I would agree.
Also, I want to be clear. My point wasn't just data, more complex data tracking in general, but then it specifically affects the game and the story. Sorry.
Oh yeah, I got you. I think though that there's a potential to really just tell a realistic story without some of the bullshit that seems to always need to creep its way in. Yeah. And then let them make meaningful choices. I think that's the next step for these types of games. If you're asking where the future is, it's really putting in stuff that other games seem to already have figured out, where players want to make interesting choices, and it's not the very last mission choosing between which person dies and which person lives. That's not necessarily an interesting choice. It's a big choice, but it's not necessarily interesting, I guess is what I would say.
An interesting choice might be, do you want to, you have to, raid a building. Do you want to go in the roof and be stealthy? Do you want to go in the front door, guns blazing? Do you want to drive around back and try using explosives? Things like that.
Do you want to go full Hitman and dress like a birthday clown to get into the birthday party, and then you use the clown's tools to kill the target? Sorry, I fucking.
Oh, I would love a GTA game where you could dress up as a clown and then go out people with balloons. That'd be great.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think Hitman would provide a lot of good lessons on design and for a lot of kinds of games. I would stand by that. I fucking love those games.
I think overall that GTA seems like it exists in a world where all these other genres don't exist in a way. Like, they haven't made the changes that other games have made, specific like RPGs and those sorts of games. It's weird that they're still allowed to kind of like be this pinnacle and I don't hate them. I don't love them. I'll get all excited when 6 is announced. I'll probably play it. But for me right now, GTA 5, in a weird way, is the only thing I'm interested in is because of how great the RP has been that I've been watching on Twitch. The GTA 5 RP still continues to be amazing. So, like, as a world builder and as a world tool, I think that's got some potential. But I don't know how many other people share that weird niche view of it.
Yeah, it's one of those things where almost the tools it provides are more interesting than what the designers have chosen to do with those tools.
Yeah, a lot of my experiences with early GTA were me and my little brother. When we were kids, well, not kids, but teenagers, old enough to play the game. Don't call my mom and dad. Hey, let me play for an hour. You play for an hour, and let's just get into stuff. Into stuff
right now. Sorry.
But more get into stuff like, okay, let's see how long we can live with a 5-star wanted level, or let's see, if we can actually steal that helicopter that's in that one weird spot. Things like that, I think, were more fun for us than any of the missions or than any of the storylines and stuff. And I think that's okay. I mean, I think that's a good thing for the developers and the designers to look at and say, okay, well, can we just make this fun, first of all? And yeah, I think there's a lot of fun in the minute-to-minute gameplay of GTA, but, in the overall, maybe not.
Yeah, so one way designers have tried to make these games kind of more fun is by adding more sci-fi or supernatural elements to them. Like we mentioned, Saints Row 4 is set in a simulation where you have superpowers. And then there are games like Crackdown, Prototype, Infamous, most recently the Spider-Man game for PS4, where it's the same setup where you're in a city, but now this time you've got superpowers. And you can use those to beat the shit out of people. So, I'm not saying that GTA necessarily needs to have superpowers for it to be a good time. But, it's another approach that can be taken to kind of revive the staler elements of the genre, let's say.
Yep.
I just want to have the ability to... another thing that GTA 3 did was kind of the game's glitches kind of benefited you sometimes. For example, there was another mission where there's several missions, but there's one particular mission where you run into a crowd and then someone runs away and you have to get them. But if you block the street with multiple cars before the mission starts, he will be blocked. You shoot him and you win. I want that type of freedom to be back in these games.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so you don't necessarily need superpowers. They're fun. Don't get me wrong. Or even stuff that's not realistic but isn't really a superpower. Like Sleeping Dogs has literally just a key that's for action hijacking, which is you're in a vehicle and you can jump to another vehicle and hijack it. There's a key for that.
Fuck yeah.
Sleeping Dogs. It's a dedicated key. It's hilarious.
I am a sucker for the GTA supernatural stuff. The Mount Chiliad mystery, is there Bigfoot, the UFO, all that stuff is I love it. I wish the game had more and more and more and more and more of that. If I could pitch my perfect game, it would almost be like an open world X-Files. I mean, I would just love to just run around and just solve little weird mysteries and, investigate little urban legends and stuff like that. And GTA always gives you just a taste of it. and it's the most interesting part of the whole game to me. You know,
it sounds like your perfect game is Deadly Premonition.
No. Yeah, a little bit. Deadly Premonition is pretty great, but no, actually,
it's broken as shit.
Oh, whatever. No, my brother and I's always the example we always had of that was their dream was an open world RPG set in the Buffy universe, designed by Obsidian with QA by someone that's not Obsidian.
Yeah, but that's the kind of, like, I would love to just, like, roam around a map, do, like, meet little strangers, and they'd be like, hey, you know, there's this really weird building downtown, and you should go investigate it. I've heard weird noises at night, and, you know, you have to plan it out and go figure out. That's what I would love to do, but
absolutely,
I'm probably a 1 in a million person for that. But the supernatural that stuff in general, I love it.
Mm-hmm. I would say, you know, if they made a supernatural version of Judgment, you'd be all over that.
Oh yeah, or or like Supernatural the game. Like that. Yeah.
That'd be great. Yeah, that would be weird but fun. That's urban fantasy has not been super well explored by video games. I mean, recently there was Vampire, and then, you know, there's the old
Atmosphere of the game. You mean?
Sorry,
Atmosphere of the game. That I played it, and that game's got not much else going for it besides a gorgeous atmosphere.
Vampire is a flawed game for sure.
I couldn't tell
bought
you
it
now
and
what
then
the
never
main
played
character's
it.
name was if you put a gun to my head. I called him Vampire the whole game.
I bought it and then never played it. It's on my backlog. I'll get to it sometime next year.
Sure.
Yeah, there's not that much urban fantasy. Like, remember BioWare's canceled Shadow Realms?
Oh my god, yes I do.
Yeah, I was hoping that was going to be like a BioWare game, but set in like a Magic City.
Yes.
That was what I really wanted. It's like, oh man, this is going to be dope. And then it's like, this is a 4-player action RPG co-op experience that we're going to cancel anyway.
Yeah, god damn it.
Like, god damn it, BioWare.
And then you got
Why'd you get my hopes up? So yeah, I was kind of disappointed when Shadow Realms got canned.
Mm-hmm.
That's a shame. It's always a shame.
You know, you mentioned superhero games, and I think there's a really natural fit for open world superhero games. And Spider-Man, I enjoyed it. I liked it for what I played. It's very derivative of Batman, which I think kind of set the standard early on for open world games, but a really dead world. Batman feels so dead to me when I go back and play it now, compared to other open world games.
One of the funniest things about, like, unintentionally funniest things about Arkham Knight is at the start of the game, the entire city of Gotham gets evacuated, and then the map becomes empty. And it's so clear they did that just to clear out the map so that Batman wouldn't be running into civilians every 30 seconds.
Yeah, and then Spider-Man goes the other way and embraces that, right? Like, it's like, cool, go take a selfie with a civilian, you know, or meet your fans, or like that to me, I think, is a little bit more interesting how those 2 different games kind of took that 2 different opportunity and said, well, yeah, would you rather meet a superhero or, you know, be a brooding loner, I guess.
That's Spider-Man's
I guess
satisfying on that front for me. Sorry.
Spider-Man is like a man of the people, right? So I get why they have those different approaches, but it's not like Batman lives in a world where civilians don't exist.
No, I mean, Batman does. I'm sorry, I don't want to be the comic book person, but yeah, like, it's not like Batman doesn't interact with civilians generally, especially given that Bruce Wayne is an important part of what I think Batman gameplay should be. Like,
that's a really good point.
Yeah. And
they have the Telltale games, right?
Yeah,
where you get to Bruce Wayne it up.
Yeah, and I really liked that, but I won't delve into that too much. But yeah.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I don't think you ever even see Bruce Wayne in most of the Batman games. I might be wrong, but
yeah, the beginning of
see him, like, very briefly.
He's thrown into the prison city as Bruce Wayne, and then he becomes Batman in like the first 20 minutes. Like, that's it.
That's not. But yeah, I wonder, like, I think a lot of people thought this Avengers game was going to be a lot more than it was, to be honest with you. I think this looks like another tie-in cash cow, but it would be amazing to really do like an almost like have you guys played the Lego Avengers games or the Lego's Marvel Heroes games? Imagine that's got so much fun open world potential. If you took that a little bit more serious and just ran with that concept, I think you could just print money.
So like marry Lego City Undercover to Lego Avengers?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's what Marvel superheroes, Lego superheroes kind of does in a way.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that weird puzzly, gimmicky stuff that Lego games like to do, but I think if you got away from that and instead just gave people like a very open world roaming with lots of little, problems to solve and things like that, I think you could really just nail that genre.
The pitch that I've really liked, and this came from ex-Polygon editor Griffin McElroy, of all people. The pitch that I've always liked is like, whether it's Spider-Man or like whatever specific hero you want to think of, like specifically the idea of like a Persona style, where you have the civilian life of the character, and you have social links, and then you have what are basically just like isolated like dungeons of like superheroing. I really like that concept.
That would be that's amazing.
Yeah.
Judgment has that, like with not with the superhero.
Yeah.
But like Judgment effectively has social links.
Good. Cool. I would like social links to be more of a thing in games.
And actually, the really nice thing about Judgment is that you see your social links just like walking around town, and they'll like wave hi at you.
Nice.
And I believe waving at you gives you like a tiny boost in health.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I love that.
But I think there's a world where people got a little bit more, I don't want to say experimental, but a little bit more okay with opening themselves up to doing something different with that Avengers game, and it's a really cool open world game instead of what it looks like it's going to be, which is a weird brawler that I don't think people really want anymore. But
weird brawler is also almost exclusively single player, which makes no sense.
That's the Avengers game we wanted, like when Iron Man 1 came out. Now we've kind of moved a little bit past that, I think. But we can do a whole episode on how much I lament the state of Marvel games someday. But yeah.
Maybe I'm just missing something here. How did the comic book industry as a whole, like the Arkham games notwithstanding, manage to fuck up video games so badly
every single time? I mean, it's incredible. Like some of those games should probably be able just to like. There's been weird standalone episodes. Like I think Hulk Ultimate Destruction was a good one. I think there was a Punisher one that I think was pretty good. I think like in the PS2 era. But it's weird that like you have to think of like, why can't that be a Captain America game that was good? Why can't there have been it's just weird to me that they've missed so many times with so many big properties. I don't know. I can't think of a good reason, because you can't say it doesn't translate to games. They absolutely translate to games, but it seems like
we've seen really good games like this. Like Batman Arkham Asylum, great game, and I just don't know why. Like, I don't think that is the only good comic book adaptation that could possibly ever be made.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
It's bizarre to me. It's so weird. I wish I could, read a book about it. I wouldn't write it because I'm not that much interested in it. But I would really wonder what happens. Is it a rights thing? I can't imagine that Marvel is that controlling with their rights, so much more so than DC, that because of that they can't make good games. Is it a studio issue? Is it they always wanted to tie into the movies? There's just so many questions about why can't they be good. I don't know the answer. I wish I could sit down with my kid and play a really cool Avengers game, where me and him could run through the city and I could be Hulk and he could be Captain America. I think that'd be a real fun game. I don't know why the hell that doesn't exist. It's crazy. It's just
some Alliance games.
Kind of. I mean, but even those are kind of like, I haven't played the new one. I don't know how 3 is, but a lot of
3 is okay.
Yeah, I've generally heard good things, but like, I think the thing with the Ultimate Alliance games is like they can do a good job of rendering the world and the characters, but the gameplay is still very simplistic and doesn't feel as representative as it could be, you know?
Yeah, they should be at the point right now with Marvel games where we're into like our 10 millionth, great Avengers game, but that would be a hell of an urban game to get it back on topic.
Yep.
I'll have to keep waiting.
Yeah. I think, there's some superheroes that lend themselves really well to that genre of game. Mm-hmm. Like, there should be a Green Arrow game.
Yeah. Or a Daredevil. Could you imagine how you could do some really cool stuff with his vision? Like weird Batman's detective vision almost, but constantly, or stuff like that. There's really cool opportunities.
You know what I'm imagining? Do you guys know the indie game Beyond Eyes?
Yeah.
Have you guys played it?
Yeah, it's the like dots arrayed like on a. I can't remember. It almost looks like Oberdin, right?
No, that's a different game. It's this very painterly watercolor style game where you're playing as a blind girl, and it creates visual representations of what the blind girl hears. So sometimes she'll hear things that she'll think that something is like, say, an approaching train, but really it's like a television playing in a shop store or something like that. And once, so you'll see certain things like rapidly transform into other things that she realizes what she's actually hearing. I'm imagining that, but kind of like in an open world.
That's really cool. Yeah.
Well, there's so much potential with so many heroes, and household name heroes. You don't always have to, try to make it work, but yeah, it's crazy. I hate how we've ended up where we're at right now with Marvel games, and one day someone will figure it out, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, I still think they're better.
Just to clarify, I know that the Green Arrow is DC.
Yeah.
Oh, dope. I still think they're better than. If you want to talk about licensed games in general, but boy, the NES era, that the X-Men game on NES is just a howler.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
The one with arcade and all that one.
No, that's a Super NES one. That's Arcade Revenge. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, X-Men was just this top-down characters, awful. Just it was awful, and there was a cheat code on the cartridge for invisibility, and it was the only way to win. It was so awful. It's just, and the Silver Surfer game was just terrible.
I remember that one. Was it Silver Surfer and Hawkeye?
That was just Silver Surfer, and you died in one hit, and if you clipped a wall, you died.
And I'm getting a lot of stuff wrong. What was there? There was one where it was like a side scroller beat 'em up, and it was like the weirdest Marvel characters I could imagine. I want to say it was like Hawkeye, Silver Surfer, maybe Captain America was one of them, and it just like the animation was really, really bad. It just felt like a Bad Dudes kind of clone. But that one I always remember it was something that like all my friends had. I never did. I always wanted it.
There's a Captain America in the Avengers arcade game.
Yeah, I just pulled that up.
Did it have Silver Surfer in it?
It looks like...
If not, it should.
Yeah. It has the Vision and Namor.
That's it. That's the one. Yeah.
Mostly I remember the voice acting. I can't move.
I think it was the same people who did the X-Men game, and it just looks kind of like the X-Men arcade game. Does it look like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not really. I mean, it's not Konami, last I checked.
Yeah, one day we'll get a good superhero game. It'll happen. I think Spider-Man's a really good one. Actually, I shouldn't say that. So
yeah, Spider-Man 2018 is good and provides a good platform to keep building on. So I'm optimistic for that.
Do you think people are burned out on Batman? I know it's been a while since Night.
I think Night soured a bunch of people. Like, Night was very well received for people who reviewed the console version at launch, but then the PC version also came out at the same time, and it was garbage, so that soured people on it.
I don't even think it's a good game, period.
Oh, I don't think it's a good game at all either. Yeah. But then it sort of went through the same cycle as like Bioshock Infinite and Dragon Age Inquisition, where it was really well received at launch, and then the flaws kind of became apparent in retrospect.
Mm-hmm.
I'll still defend Dragon Age Inquisition. But
I still like that game. Yeah. I still defend Bioshock Infinite. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
It's just it's the way that it was received by people at large and the narrative that built around it.
Yeah, no, that's completely fair. And also, like, yeah, like the people who were the minority of just like, yeah, this is kind of whack. When like City came out, they got to control the narrative finally. Hi, hello. That was
Yeah, I mean, I will say, as someone who quite liked City, Night is noticeably worse in many respects, and it kind of doubles down on the bad parts of City and doesn't take any of the good parts.
Yeah, I'll be fair. I never played past City, so I can't speak from a lot of experience. But yeah, but that makes sense.
Yeah, Night almost takes like this. So City and Origins both have, for lack of a better word, dungeons. Like there are these bespoke, well rendered indoor areas where you go through these really long, complicated
like
missions.
The Riddler's Lair and those other.
Yeah. Night has fucking none of that.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing to
It's
lose.
like all the missions are all out in the open world. It's not good.
The master detective stuff is just clownish in Night. It's just the dumbest crap.
So bad.
It's the which one?
Origins is the only game of that series that got the detective stuff right, by the way.
Which was the one where it started where you had to unlock the enemies to fight? Was that
what?
Was that there was one where like you could like basically play through the whole game and miss fighting certain villains if you didn't do certain things in like a very specific order.
That's fucking whack.
I don't recall that at all, actually.
I
don't know.
Somebody played through it and like they were talking about like this whole list of villains that they fought that I never even saw. I think it was Merve when you played through it when we were talking on the podcast actually. But yeah, like there was like villains that you could miss. Let me look that up. But yeah, don't quote me on that.
It might be Origins.
I think it was Origins.
Because the Night you have to basically you almost have to 100% Night to see the credits.
Right. Yeah.
It's awfully disrespectful of my time.
Mm-hmm.
Like I literally completed the main story and couldn't trigger the end credits until I spent another 10 hours doing side content. I was so pissed.
Yeah, I think it was definitely Origins now that I'm looking at it. I think, like, I remember you talking about fighting, like, Copperhead, maybe, and Deadshot, and a couple other ones. I was like, I never even saw them in game. I don't know if it was, like, something I did, but I don't know if I 100%ed it or if they just showed up later, but it's weird that if you're going to have those villains, have them right up front. So, yeah, it's... Maybe I'm remembering it wrong, but I almost remember us having this exact conversation. You telling me about all these villains that you fought, and I don't remember fighting almost any of them. So
yeah, Origins also had some weird bugs where some of the side quests wouldn't trigger properly. So there was one, like I literally could not do the Anarchy side quest just because it was broken the entire game I was playing. Yeah, that game also was subject to a lot of controversy because Warner Brothers decided to openly prioritize DLC over fixing bugs.
Oh God, yeah.
That's never a good look. So
yeah, here it is. Okay, so missing most wanted characters. There's Anarchy, Penguin, Deadshot, Hatter, Bird, Black Mask, a bunch of other ones that you have to do the most wanted. I guess there's like a in-game board or something like that to go and catch them. I think that's what I was talking about.
Okay, so I must have done a couple of those probably by accident because I wasn't trying to 100% that game. But yeah, it's very possible to not see some of those villains because the content is optional.
Yeah, that's weird. So yeah,
I'd say I prefer that approach to making you do everything like in Arkham Knight, but it's weird to relegate some more iconic villains to side content.
That's what I was gonna say. Penguin to me is somebody you want in the game if he exists. You know, like he's kind of to me at least one of like the top 5 villains of Batman. So
I don't even read comics really, and I know who Penguin is. He's just that iconic.
Yeah, so just to get back real quick on one of the things that I want to talk about with the open world games. I know I talked a little bit about the the RP and the stuff like that, but I think there's a lot of potential going forwards for these types of open world games to really just be almost like completely sandboxes. I think we've seen that a lot with like those, maybe like some of the like space games and things like that. But I think there's a space for actual true, hey, do what you want type sandbox game eventually. And I don't know if it's going to be a GTA or what, but I'm really.
Is APB sort of like that?
Well, it was more of an MMO, but yeah, it was very much like you pick your side. But I like the idea of a type of game where if you actually incorporate a multiplayer into it, and there's no reason why you couldn't these days. So many other games are able to figure out how to make multiplayer work. I think it'd be really cool to basically have like a GTA, not GTA Online, but a regular GTA where, like the guy in your game is an actual cop trying to catch you, versus you going around doing villain shit. I think that'd be kind of interesting to see if they could ever figure something like that out, like a drop in, drop out multiplayer where if you're doing these heists or these other things, you actually have an actual person trying to catch you, rather than the 5-star wanted level, which to me I think is kind of one of the biggest throwbacks and drawbacks of where the series currently is how that whole wanted level stuff works. I think it'd be really interesting to see where that ends up in a couple of years.
Watch Dogs has a bit of that with the invasion mechanic. Then the Just Cause series is like the Just Cause 2 multiplayer mod, which is not exactly what you're looking for because it's pure anarchy, but it has some of that interaction.
Yeah, I've been replaying through Watch Dogs 2 here and there, and that's exactly what got me thinking about that. The idea of me doing evil stuff that puts a bounty on my head that lets an actual person drop in, I think is a really cool one to kind of explore a little bit more. Be interesting to see if that's something that GTA would be willing to incorporate or not. They've always done online kind of weird. I feel like with GTA, honestly, if they can't monetize it in online, they're not interested in it. So might be a little cynical, but that's definitely the vibe I've got.
Oh yeah, GTA Online just like fucking prints money for Rockstar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and that's the other thing with these games is that I'm almost worried that after Red Dead Redemption 2, that's kind of it, because like these are expensive, large games to make, and they're hard to, because they're single player games for the most part. They're hard to monetize for recurring profit. So I don't know whether like these games are going to die.
Yeah,
because like Activision and EA aren't publishing these kinds of games.
Yeah, I worry about single player a lot in general. It just seems like if you can't figure out that way to make a loop for payments, then the game either dies or it gets like really weird DLC or loot boxes or stuff like that. I don't think they've gotten or found a good balance for it, honestly. But I think you're 100% right. I think huge open world games like GTA are going to be number one on the chopping block for most publishers when they start to see, the kind of money they make, and maybe that you're just getting from now on, you're just getting GTA 6 online or GTA, whatever online, and they're going from there on it.
I think GTA will be like kind of the one exception because they know the online component is just going to print money, but I just don't think this is going to be viable outside of Rockstar. I don't think we're ever going to see a Mafia 4.
Yeah. That's a shame.
Like,
3 had
so they're a true crime rate from Activision.
Yeah, I enjoyed 3 for what it was. I think it had some good stuff to going on. Even weird stuff like like licensing songs and stuff. I'm sure make these games really, really expensive to make. So you probably you can't be as chancy with it. Like I wonder about how much of Crackdown 2's delays and stuff we're trying to figure out how to get some of the stuff that we're talking about right. Because as much
Crackdown 3, Crackdown
3,
sorry. As much as I enjoyed 3, it was one of those things where I could really tell, like, okay, they really couldn't figure out how to make this cool anymore. Like the stuff that we love, the jumping around, getting orbs and stuff. I don't think people would just enjoy that as much. So you're kind of chasing something that's gone in a way, But yeah, the open world genre, I think it's just kind of coalesced into the GTA, and then that's it. Which is kind of unfortunate. I hope Saints Row and all these other games start to really kind of figure out how they made it work before and come back around and start making more versions of it.
Volition tried to make something different with Agents of Mayhem, and it wasn't good.
Yeah,
and it was not rewarded for it being bad.
Yeah, that's true.
Wait, Volition shut down, right?
Yeah, well, Volition shut down because THQ died was the main thing.
Okay, yeah.
I think they ended up doing some kind of weird buy-in. That whole THQ acquisition thing was one of the most confusing things I've ever followed in video games, because a lot of those places still kind of exist, but not really. And THQ Nordic is kind of its own thing, and all that.
That was
the HN publisher.
That was Nordic bought all the important THQ stuff and rebranded themselves as THQ Nordic just to gain that rep. But they're not THQ; they just own THQ stuff.
Yeah, it's like the name, like that's it. Did you guys know that a Titan Quest expansion came out? For example,
what the fuck is Titan Quest?
Exactly. It was like basically a Diablo clone that THQ early on basically pumped out the door, and people loved it. And then they're still out there making these games. So I don't know. I think Saints Row, is probably the only other one I could really see making a comeback. But they've got to find out what works for them as well.
Apparently, the Saints Row 3 Switch port sold well, which is weird, given that that's the worst one, and also was apparently a bad port. But we'll see if that
is pretty much dead.
Yeah,
I'm trying to think of any other, like, what were the big, urban. There really wasn't much left, right? I mean, that's pretty much it.
There's the Driver series, but that's on hold. Mm-hmm. There's the Getaway series, but that's been dead for over a decade. What else is there? Watch Dogs is coming out with a new entry, but that seems to be moving away from it. We'll never get another LA Noire because Team Bondi doesn't exist anymore, and Brendan McNamara is a fucking asshole.
Yep.
So, like, I don't know. No More Heroes 3 is happening, so we're going to get that.
So maybe it's going to be kind of like the WB, whatever they decide to do with their games, their Batmans, their Mad Max and stuff like that, and then whoever else. But we did talk about Mad Max, huh? I really like that.
Yeah, that's not super, like, that's more like a desert game.
Yeah. So urban blight fantasy. Yeah, I enjoyed that one a lot, though. I think that was the last time I really liked the Batman combat, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's that kind of combat mechanic I wouldn't say it's become wholly stale, but you need to have more in the game than just that combat for me.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it doesn't draw me in like it did at once. So, yeah, I think a lot about, besides just the superheroes and there's got to be a way to tell a modern open world story that just somebody hasn't figured out yet, I think.
So, interestingly, and kind of closing this up and talking about the future of the genre, it seems almost like Cyberpunk 2077 will take some inspirations from these kinds of games. Like, it's set in a city, and it's like, it's an open world urban game. It just has more RPG elements. Maybe that's the way forward. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I think even if you look at GTA, the creep of whatever you want to call an RPG these days is already kind of getting baked in to that formula. You got a lot more stats and driving and special meters and abilities and stuff. And
like Sleeping Dogs had a skill tree, for instance.
I think that's something that could definitely make its way into it. But I think then that way you're kind of looking more at the Skyrim or the Elder Scrolls or the whatever blueprint at that point, right? Where you're just kind of trying to say, okay, well, how do I stick you in an open world with a fun power set that makes you want to keep playing, but that doesn't let you get, completely out of whack with power. So I think that'll be the next step is to figure out where you take a game like GTA and put it in an open world where people get to do what they want when they want. You can kind of do that now, but from the perspective of you're building skill trees and you're building up levels and stuff like that, I think that'd be really interesting to see. Or maybe you make a Sims with it, kind of like a persistent family almost. Michael teaches his son how to learn the ropes of the game, and he passes on the bank robber genes, I guess.
It's sort of like what Watch Dogs Legion is doing, right? Where you're building this team of procedurally generated assholes.
Well, what's interesting is I think they kind of did that with an Assassin's Creed, Brotherhood kind of line where you recruit the assassins, you train them, you do stuff like that. It'll be interesting to see if Watch Dogs can pull off that same kind of feel, because I actually love that part of Assassin's Creed. And be interested to see if they can nail that. Building a team.
I liked how you could make the game a lot easier.
Yeah.
By just recruiting all the assassins.
Oh, yeah. Like,
made some of the harder missions trivial.
I had like a team of like 5 master assassins, and I could literally just like walk through like an alleyway and just whistle, and like, you know, people would jump from like left and right and above and stuff, just like kill people as you walk through an alleyway whistling. It was such a cool feeling. I'm sure there's some good YouTube videos about it, but yeah, you could basically get to the point where like you didn't even have to do anything. You were like a I don't know, like a mafia boss, just walking through an area whistling as your assassins did everything else. It was really cool, and that's what I'm hoping that Watch Dogs kind of, at least, maybe not that same mechanic, but at least some of that same feel, where, you know, you're this hacker that's just walking around, and you know, the granny with a shotgun is taking care of your problems for you. I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah, I think the best conclusion we can provide for this podcast is that more games should have assassin grandmas.
More games should have assassin grandmas and wacky costumes to change the way you kill people.
Yeah. I'm all for wacky costumes. I'll never not buy a wacky costume.
Yeah.
Bones, by the way.
Obviously,
go ahead.
Obviously, there's a lot more substantive stuff to do to improve these games and change them than what I just said.
Oh yeah, Bones, by the way, just to sell you more on the Yakuza games, in Yakuza Kiwami 2, there's a Kung Fu grandma.
Fuck yes. Excellent.
And, okay, I actually should tell the story because it's really funny.
Yep.
So you come upon the side mission, and this old grandma's like, oh, you have to help me like beat up these thugs that are trying to attack me. And you're like, okay, sure, I'll do this for you, grandma. And then the fight starts, and you see that the grandma has a health meter. And you're like, okay, is this an escort mission? Do I have to protect her? And then you see her approaching the bad guys, and you're like, wait, is she gonna throw a punch? It's probably gonna be like this feeble thing, right? And then she like fucking leaps in the air and drop kicks like this Yakuza guy.
Yeah.
I was like, what the fuck? She's like 75. How is she not breaking her head?
That is amazing.
Apparently she's just like this old kung fu bastard. You like fight alongside her in a bunch of other side missions. It's really funny.
Also in Yakuza 5, you climb up a mountain and fight a bear.
I love fighting bears. Fuck bears.
Yeah, you fight a tiger in Yakuza Kiwami too.
Oh yes, the infamous punch him directly in the face. QTE.
Oh yeah, I played through that. I remember that fight is hard as balls though, because that tiger won't let you get a combo in.
That's what I hate about tigers. Never letting you combo them. It's the worst.
So rude.
God damn you, Tony! All right. On that note, I think we're going to call this podcast to a close unless there's another important point any folks wanted to bring up. Oh God, no! We are not going down that road again.
No. I did have like 1-2 more things to quickly say about Saints Row.
Sure.
But I want to let other people take their turns first if they have anything.
Okay, good. Go ahead, please.
Cool. Okay. So my single favorite part of the gameplay in Saints Row 2 is not any of the distinctive mini games. It's not any like standout like story mission. It's just the basic. I've talked about hostage taking before, and I love that. But specifically, like when you're driving down the street and you get star ratings for continually going down the wrong lane. You know,
near miss and
yeah. You get near miss for every time you like graze a car in the same lane, and you also get ongoing lane. And it is so addictive to just keep getting those scores over and over and over again until you're at top speed, and then I hit Y. And I just dive out of the car as the car like smashes into something. It is one of my favorite feelings in video games just ever. So I really wanted to say that.
Oh yeah, I remember now. I used to love like driving in the wrong lane in Saints Row games.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite things about them.
Oh yeah, and sorry, this one will be real quick. Sorry, this is less important to my overall like thing I was trying to say, because Saints Row 2 has really good gameplay. But like, so there's a secret ending in Saints Row 2. where the whole thing is that you've overthrown the corporate bureaucracy that gentrified your city, and you're on top of the world again, right? And then you find the guy who betrayed you at the end of Saints Row 1, and no one remembers or cares about the plot of Saints Row 1, but that scene where you just confront this guy and you just sit down with him, and then you coldly execute him, and just talk about, you will never ever tolerate being fucked over by anyone. I think it's genuinely one of the best like crime story beats that I've seen in a game.
That's a good point. Like it's a lot of times when you play even these types of games, like we talked about how like GTA is like very nihilistic. You don't often feel like the bad guy though somehow. Yeah. Does that make sense? Like
yes. Yeah.
I don't like you're doing evil bad shit, but it's like, well, they're making me do it, or the CIA agent make, but like they very rarely let you actually feel like you're making like a morality choice, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's a really cool point to make about, at least this game, they're doing something bad and they're like, oh no, you're the bad guy.
Yeah, no, I think the game sells that you're the bad guy really well. And that's all I was saying. So thank you.
Yeah, I think that's one thing we didn't discuss too much when we were talking about like really good crime story beats, is that a lot of these games draw inspiration from like their relevant cultures, crime movies. So there's a lot like in these like the American or British games that in the genre, they draw inspiration from like gangster flicks and like, Sleeping Dogs. Yeah, drew inspiration from like Hong Kong action. Yakuza obviously draws inspiration from Yakuza flicks, and so they're kind of imbued with the tropes of those genres. So I thought it's interesting. They out of all the games, like you say that games are inspired by movies a lot, but they really wear their inspirations on their sleeves. In comparison to other video games. All right, I think that's all we wanted to say today.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for joining me in this discussion. Thank you to PT, Lovely Bones, and the Kappa, as always. Thank you, listeners, for sticking with us despite things we may have said in the past. And we'll see you next time.
Night.
Ciao.
Yeah, have a good day, everyone.
Yep.